Yesterday's stage, a magnificent victory from Wout van Aert as we headed to Felixstowe. Ethan Vernon in second place, Max Canter in third, and the former race leader now in fourth place on the general classification. An absolutely superb piece of tactical play and strength to take that stage, move himself into the lead of the race. But today is slightly shorter, 146.2 k's in the southeast of England from Southend-on-Sea to Harlow. Start up through Burnham on Crouch. That's the first intermediate sprint of the day, and a primarily flat course today with just over 1,000 metres of elevation. We gently winch our way through towards Ship Road, the third category climb, the only categorised climb of the day, and then we drop down in with a little kick up to the line in Harlow. And here we are in Southend-on-Sea, another absolutely stunning day by the seaside today, our second visit to the seaside in as many days. A gentle breeze blowing today as we look down on the assembled peloton, and for the first time in this race we now have a GC leader on a different time than the rest of the field following that absolutely amazing play by Jumbo-Visma yesterday. Reminder of the stage result: Wout van Aert took the win just ahead of Ethan Vernon, 3 seconds in front in fact, went clear on the penultimate corner of the day, coming in to the last 750 metres. The man has already got 4 stage wins under his belt, just let the wheel slip, and then Wout van Aert was managed to move clear and held on and actually extended his gap into a headwind along the seafront, and it was nothing short of superb. Running out of superlatives for the way that Jumbo-Visma are dominating this year's Tour of Britain on stage 6, and nobody else has got a sniff just yet. Although Ethan Vernon from Great Britain is getting close. Each stage is getting better and better, ably assisted by the young team that's built around him. They've also got options for the weekend, Stevie Williams in particular. But right now, it looks like it could be another sprint day today. Very flat, not too much wind, as I said, for the first part of the day. You're going to get a bit of a tailwind, and then for the final part of the day, a little headwind as they run in to Harlow, as they head further west. Pondering on the start line there, that's the man in the black jersey, James Fouché, has got a significant lead in the King of the Mountains classification now, after being in the breakaway almost every single day. 37 points to Harry Tanfield's 19, and only 4 points on offer today. As long as he finishes safely, he will still be ensconced in that jersey. Points jersey is on the shoulders of Olav Koy. 100 points in the bag for the man from Jumbo-Visma. Didn't score any points yesterday, but what he did do is ease up, raise both arms aloft to celebrate the victory of his teammate. And according to the post-race interview, Wout van Aert said initially the plan was to just go for a normal lead out, but he said, how about we try something a bit different? In the worst case scenario, if I do get caught, then we can still lead out Olav Koy. But the more unlikely plan actually worked, and it's caught everybody by surprise. A stunning piece of team riding, but ultimately he still had to make it work on that run into the line, into that headwind, but held off the bunch by a comfortable 3 seconds, and apparently rode the last 800 metres averaging around 800 watts, which is very powerful indeed. So beautiful day here. Time to bring in Brian Smith. Brian, another, well, gorgeous day here. Warm conditions yet again, expected to maybe touch 27, 28 degrees. It's not often we see the Tour of Britain in these sweltering conditions, but 5 wins from 5, odds on to make it 6 today potentially.
Potentially, yeah. I think after the stage, Mark, who was doing the interviews, just asked Olav Koy, what the plan was. Was it back to a sprint? Although it's a slightly uphill finish today, which I would think would suit Wout van Aert a little bit better than Olav Koy, but not being on site, it's very difficult to see it from the kind of profile. But by the sounds of things, they may have something else up their sleeve. But I would think that Olav Koy would be their best. There's no kind of corners. It's quite I wouldn't say easy, a kind of steady running. So I think because of the technical nature yesterday, it kind of suited what they were trying to do. 600 metres from the last phase of corners. But it's an easier run in today, and I would think that Olav Koy could be their man yet again, because their plan worked yesterday, and now they've got 3 seconds ahead of everybody else.
They certainly have, as you say. It's a gently meandering finish into Harlow. With 1k to go, pass under the Flamme Rouge. It's a big roundabout. They take a right turn, but it looks like it's pretty fast. And then the road swings round to the left and opens out with about 500 metres to go. It's a long finishing straight, but as Brian was saying, it does pick up towards the line. A little bit of a drag up. I'm just thinking back, when we had the Tour Series, Harlow actually hosted on a number of occasions a Tour Series round, and I do seem to remember, I'm not too sure if this is exactly the same finish, but the town is on a bit of a slope, so there is a bit of a kicker, but how significant it is, we shall soon find out. We'll know in 146.2 k's time. Conversation on the front there. Olaf Koy looking relaxed, looking calm, and the man on the right hand side, that jersey, he's in a very good spot. 37 points to the good. Lots of points on offer over the weekend though. I'm just wondering, Brian, given the distribution, or given how far should I say the climb is into the race today, do you think James Fouché can give himself a day off? I would say it might be a good idea, because the next couple of days are going to be very difficult. He's been in the break pretty much every day, and to 100 k's out in the front in the breakaway just to get 4 points, I'm not too sure if that's a good idea.
No, I don't think it is. I think, Greg Henderson, the sports director, he'll be listening anyway. He's a hard taskmaster. He'll just get out there and do the job. But I think it's a case of he's riding well, he's feeling good. It's a case of, if they want a rider in the breakaway, then they might have to, get involved and, kind of help out. Whether he wants to be successful in getting in the breakaway, that's a different story. Like you say, probably better to save his legs for, a shot at it tomorrow.
Got a shot at the sprint as well today. Should it be a sprint? Rory Townsend been consistent. Jacob Scott has also been up there. He's been in a couple of moves as well, and was key in trying to drop off Rory Townsend in a good position. This is the calm before the storm. Said hardly any wind at all today, Brian. We were looking at the wind. There was a little bit of a breeze blowing. The windiest day was the day before, but today I've just got the wind app up. There's a little bit blowing. It's 2 kilometres an hour. It's almost totally still today, so I don't think the wind's going to play too much of a part at all. Initially, in the early parts of the stage, there are multiple changes of direction, but we're heading north, then we head inland a little bit further, just away from the coast to the outskirts of London. But yeah, not an overly complicated course today. But warm conditions. It's slightly more hazy as well. It's got a real muggy feel to the day, as we see a row of kids inspired by the sight that's passing before them as we gaze into the mirrored lens of Olaf Koy. Great bit of riding. I mean, we were talking about it waxing lyrical, but it really was perfectly executed, wasn't it? They're riding so well as a unit. They're ridiculously strong. But that was a real bit of finesse, wasn't it? That was just pure class. Obviously, Van Aert, there's not many people that could have finished it off in terms of riding into a headwind that long with a bunch behind. But everything was just to perfection, wasn't it?
It was. Me and you could look at that plan and we wouldn't be able to pull it off. It takes an exceptional talent to be able to do that and hold off the peloton. I think it was the moment of surprise. Everybody was kind of queued up onto Olaf Koy's wheel. So it was a good plan, executed to perfection by a master.
Certainly was. What we've got up their sleeve today, surely there must be some residual fatigue that's starting to creep into the legs after all of the riding that they've had to do. Good day yesterday as well for Q36.5 Pro Cycling. The day out in front for Joey Roscoff. He was the last man standing as the break was finally taken back. Managed to drop the last man that was with him, Abram Stockman. Previous to that, it was Callum Ormiston of the Global 6 cycling team who was there as well. Still rolling through the neutral zone, just on the edge of sunny Southend today. We started on the Western Esplanade in Southend-on-Sea, and we finish on 3rd Avenue in Harlow. And Southend-on-Sea is the first time that we've had Southend-on-Sea being a host venue, and the same can be said for Harlow as well. But a little bit more about Southend. As you can see, lovely beaches here, and known for having the world's longest pleasure pier and 7 miles of coast stretching from Shoeburyness to Leigh-on-Sea. Southend-on-Sea as a result, and for many, many years, in fact, dating back to the start of the 20th century. It's been one of Britain's most popular tourist destinations. It's a low tide, as you can see. There's a lot of big thriving art scene as well, lots of galleries showcasing multiple locations where local artists can showcase their work dating right the way back from the 17th century to the present day. A couple of people clearly with a rather wonderful view of the sea. But we've got the classic amusement arcades along the prom as well, Adventure Island, Sea Life Adventure, and then we've got the Cliffs Pavilion Theatre as well. And interestingly too, the city of Southend unveiled the carbon neutral target by 2030. They did that 4 years ago, and since then climate resilience improvements have included planting of over 600 trees, the completion of the city's first zero carbon affordable homes, the introduction of sustainable warm grants, and a comprehensive education and learning programme. Now, Southend's famous pier, get this, measures 2.14 kilometres long and is the longest pier in the world. Wow, that is absolutely insane, isn't it? Originally a timber pier, it was replaced by an iron one at the back end of the 1800s, and it got Pier of the Year this year. That is a very, very long pier indeed. Now we start with a neutral flag will be dropped in Shoeburyness, which is just located at the mouth of the Thames estuary. And the beach there, about a quarter of a mile long, so not quite as large or as long as the one that we're seeing now. You see the multiple little sheds or changing rooms, popularised of course in the Victorian era, where people would go and get changed, put on their stripy swimming suits before having a bit of a paddle. A few of the locals rolling along with the peloton as well. Let's run through the top 10 yesterday again, giving you an idea of who might feature on today's sprint. It's been a similar cast of characters as you would imagine. Wout van Aert took the win. Ethan Vernon just rolled Danny van Poppel on the line for 3rd place. Best placing so far in this year's race by the young Dane from Bingoal. He's a stagiaire with him. He was 4th. Max Canter was the Movistar rider they were protecting. He started riding at the back end of yesterday alongside Jumbo-Visma, and completely snuffing out any hopes that the breakaway had. David Persico is also another young stagiaire that's impressive, running for Bingoal as well. So 4th and 5th on the day, 2 in the top 10 for Bingoal. Milan Fretin, another consistent performance for him in 7th place. David Bomboy of the TDT Univet cycling team was in 8th, and Tom Pickup, another solid performance by the man from the Innis Grenadiers, in 9th. And 10th place on the day, Sian Fredheim, again from the Uno X Pro cycling team. Another consistent ride by him. Yeah, difficult to understand. I'm wondering, Brian, do you think a lot of riders will be thinking about tomorrow's stage in terms of how they play this one, or do you think it's all in today? Because we are running out of opportunities now. There's only 3 more stages left in this race. Jumbo-Visma have almost cannibalised the Tour of Britain so far. It's very difficult, isn't it, to see a way to break the deadlock at the moment, especially on today's stage anyway.
I think if you're a sprinter, this could be, I'm talking about an ultimate sprinter. So, some sprinters can get over some of these climbs and there'll be a kind of reduced sprint in the end. But for a lot of the time, I think, the last opportunity for these sprinters. So it's a difficult one for the rest of the teams, because if you are a sprinter, you want to come to the finish and be able to sprint. I'm talking about, Ethan Vernon, but at the same time, you're going to be up against Wout van Aert and, of course, Olaf Koy. So, that's a difficulty you're going to have. So it's a real conundrum for a lot of the teams. Last chance for a sprint, but at the end of the day, how are you going to win that? And the only way you're going to win that sprint at the end is if Wout van Aert isn't there to help out Olaf Koy. In other words, he has to be kind of used up a little bit in the end and make it hard and maybe play a little bit more tactical come the end, just like the East Riding stage, where Bora Hansgrohe were very active towards the end with the Ineos Grenadiers. And the same thing was said about the start yesterday. We had so many riders from Bora Hansgrohe trying to infiltrate the breakaway. So let's see what happens at the start here, if it's as active as it was yesterday.
It was pretty active, as you say. Several breaks went clear. Finally, one was allowed to move away. Lead went out to about 3.5 minutes maximum before Jumbo-Visma started riding. It was a very long day in the saddle yesterday. Still very quick, high average speed, but 4 hours and 20 minutes of racing over the 192 kilometres yesterday. Felixstowe to Felixstowe. Another seaside visit today, of course. Southend-on-Sea to Harlow. We move inland. But as you can see, although it's a very warm day, and there is that pier that we're talking about, Southend Pier, 2.1 kilometres long, which is, I didn't realise it was that long, Brian. Have you ever been to Southend Pier?
I've been to Southend just kind of briefly, but you know, incredible when you think about it, the length of it. You know what I mean? You could pretty much hold a bike race on it. But the pictures I'm looking at here look absolutely still, and as you've already mentioned, but over 2 kilometres in length, that's some pier.
That certainly is. Yeah, Pier of the Year this year. And even when you looked at it from a distance there, looking at the scale of it, it didn't actually look like it was 2 k's long, but I can assure you it is. But yeah, absolutely. There's a little train that runs along it as well, because I guess for a lot of people that's quite a long walk. But enormously impressive in the shallow waters here. As you can see, just looking at these images, it is almost like a mill pond today. Hardly a ripple. We are a couple of kilometres out to sea there. And there's the little train. That's fully electric, that train as well. It's been running for several years now, taking people to and from the end. Maybe a little bit quieter now as we're just moving out of the holiday season, as we continue to wend our way away from Southend-on-Sea to the start proper, which should be in just a few minutes' time. Tom Pidcock just moving his way up towards the back of the peloton. Another day just to see what Ineos Grenadiers can do. They've put him in good positions for every sprint. He's been top 10, I think, every single day, but these big bunch sprints aren't necessarily right up Tom Pidcock's alley, of course, but it's important that he chips away at those stage placings just in case it comes down to that. And there aren't any more time gaps. And as Wout van Aert ominously said yesterday, Brian, it's now up to riders now. And he didn't use the phrase, they've got to attack me. He said, they've got to drop me. And Wout van Aert, on the kind of form that he's displaying at the moment with the team around him, that is going to be a very tall order, I think. It's going to provide with some exciting racing, but dropping Wout van Aert right now, or the next couple of days, is going to be, yeah, a very tall order.
Yeah, and the terrain is coming over the weekend as well. Just looking at some bathers here. It must be still warm here. Almost walking in water. Look at how shallow it is, Matt. They're out a fair distance, and it's only up to the thighs. Yeah,
it is very shallow. No big shelf to drop off here. As you can see, that's a great shot, isn't it? From the helicopter there, the long pier right out to sea, and people, it looks like they're almost like 500, 600, 700 metres out to sea there, but only up to their thighs.
Yeah, it's good to be able to see it. I was having some problems with my own pictures, but all good now.
That's good news. Very good news. Well, good to have you fully back on board, Brian. As we start slowly. It seems to be quite a long neutral today, doesn't it? There we go, just on the left-hand side. Matt Walls actually building his condition up. Olaf Koy in the green jersey now, remember, having a conversation there with Luke Rowe, who again was very active yesterday towards the back end, making sure that Tom Pidcock was in a good position. And there's only 3 riders from the Ineos Grenadiers on the same time now. Tom Pidcock at 3 seconds, Magnus Sheffield the same, and Carlos Rodriguez. But the focused face there of the Olympic champion in Omnium, of course, a couple of years ago. Can't believe it's because of the COVID years, we've got Paris next year, Brian. The Olympic Games has come around very, very quickly indeed, hasn't it?
It has indeed. 3 years between it, the last
Yep.
Olympics. So Paris is not too far away, and yeah, with the Rugby World Cup, it's a big few months for France. So I don't know who you supporting in the World Cup.
I'll be honest with you, mate. I guess. Have England qualified? I don't know if that sounds like a silly question. I guess they have, haven't they? They must have done.
Yeah, I think they just about qualified.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't really follow rugby. I'll be honest with you.
Oh, I think Mr. Bennett won't be happy with this one, will he?
He will not be happy. They've taken a naughty shortcut there. As I say, he's going to move up ahead on the inside.
Pocket Rocket, who's driving, Steve Joggin, who's driving, just put the foot down there, didn't he? He used to do that as a bike rider.
Steve Joggin from the Isle of Man, as Brian is talking about. He's the chap who's driving the lead car there, driving Mick Bennett's car, former British professional road race champion. Still a familiar figure on the scene. Bumped into him actually, Brian, up at the World Championships in Glasgow. I had a really nice conversation with him. But he was a formidable sprinter back in the day, wasn't he? A real terrier-like rider, wasn't he? Could get over the hills pretty effectively too. If he was with you in a sprint, it was game over, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was the original Manx missile, wasn't he?
He certainly was. So it looks like Mick Bennett's still smiling there, perched on the roof. Hopefully we don't go over any sleeping policemen. It does look a little bit precarious there, Mick, shall I say. It looks like everybody's back on. But yeah, heading towards Southend-on-Sea. Now, Southend location has made it pretty strategically important throughout history, apparently. With historic military buildings at nearby Gunners Park, East Beach is also the site of a defence boom built in 1939 to prevent enemy shipping and submarines from accessing the River Thames. So when I say defence boom, not a general boom in the defence industry, a physical boom out in the sea. So I thought I'd explain that one. Around 1 mile of this boom now remains, stretching right out into the Thames estuary as we finally head into the country lanes now. Beautiful lanes on yesterday's stage, highlighting and showcasing Suffolk. Ben Turner there, just in the centre, just to his right. Big classic specialist, big engine, nothing van Hooijdonk. As the speed picks up just a little bit here. Lots of blue jerseys at the front from TDT Unibet cycling team. They've managed to infiltrate a breakaway on every single day. Are we going to see Mr. Harry Tanfield up the road? Will it be Abram Stockman? Surely he's going to have pretty sore legs.
I think you were saying the other day, Matt, about the team's social media. I don't know if you noticed the latest one.
I had a little look at it. It's a bit of a parody on like X Factor, isn't it? It's worth.
Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah, Britain's Got Talent. That's it. Yeah, it's worth.
One more time.
Yeah, it's worth checking out. Actually, they are worth a follow. I'll give them a big shout out because they are very entertaining. They don't take themselves too seriously. They take the racing seriously quite. They clearly do. But there's a real light-hearted approach. And quite quirky to say the least. It's very, very funny, and as I say, they don't take themselves too seriously at all. And whoever's on their social media is doing a cracking job, let's be honest with you. So still we continue to roll out of town. 20 minutes have passed. It is a long old rollout, this one. I remember a milk crate. You'd have ridden the same year, Brian. Do you remember? I can't remember if it was 91. Actually, I can't remember if it was 91, 90 or 93. I think it was 90, 91. Where we started the stage in Birmingham and we finished in Aberystwyth. If you know your British geography, you know that's quite a long way. But back then, there was a limit to the distance amateurs could ride, and I think it was 180 or 190 k's, and the stage was about 240. So all they did, we had an hour's neutral zone. Do you remember riding out of Dudley and through the hills before we actually started the stage? 1 hour neutral, 25 miles neutral zone, and then we actually started racing. Do you remember that one? You were riding, mate. 1 hour neutral zone, or just, I think it was 1 hour 10 of neutral, just to get over so we could get from A to B, from Birmingham to Aberystwyth. And it was about 240k stage, but we weren't allowed as amateurs to ride long distances, so they neutralised it instead.
kind of remember that. Yeah, that would have been the longest neutral I've ever done.
Yeah. Here we go with the official start. Right on. Actually, I think we're accelerating before kilometre 0 now, but we are well underway now. So stage 6 of the Tour of Britain. Southend-on-Sea to Harlow, 146.2 kilometres, and the action has begun. And it is TDT Unibet cycling team who fire the first salvo. And interestingly behind, we have a little clutch of riders, including one of the Ineos Grenadiers. And I can tell you what the little break won't get too much leeway, because we've got somebody from Jumbo-Visma there as well. So here we go. I haven't quite identified who that is, but it looks like they're going to try and send 2 riders up. Now that looks like it's Harry Tanfield going across the gap. Oh, this is going to be a lonely day if it's just 2 riders. But here we go. TDT Unibet, always aggressive. And that does look like it's a figure of Abraham Stockman in front, and it's not Tanfield coming across the gap, but it looks like Q36.5. What a piece of the action as well here, Brian.
They do. Real no surprise. It's pretty much every day, the light blue jerseys, but it seems to be, similar riders. Stockman as well. I think the third time, one of his teammates trying to come across to them. So, it's not for the first time they've decided to do this in twos. Q36.5 coming across there. Looks as if it's Cairn as well, blocked. So
it's Bora.
This is not possibly what the teams want, because this again, having only 4 riders here, is a situation that maybe not everybody wants. Especially when it comes to a sprint. And I think you're right, Matt, at Bora, but is he sitting up?
He's sat up. Yeah, I think he hoped to bring a few more riders with him. Yeah. It's just, if there was 4 or 5 riders going across, Sam would definitely ride with them and put Jumbo-Visma on the back foot. Kamil Malecki getting across the gap, but it was indeed Sam Bennett. Maybe just found himself on the wheel, but yeah, that isn't going anywhere. That would be brought back immediately. So Sam Bennett has dropped back to the peloton. It certainly did look like the figure of Sam Bennett, but Malecki just piloting himself across the gap. It was indeed Bennett, but there we go. Interesting little manoeuvre there, but I think had that been a slightly larger group, he would have gone with it. But that's just not a smart move for Sam Bennett to get in a move like that, is it? Especially as one so small.
No, I think it's just a case of covering it. I think Bora wanted to do what they did yesterday, just start covering moves, but and try and get a rider in the breakaway. And I think he just kind of followed Malecki there to try and help out the team. But with a sprint stage coming up, he is the one that has to kind of save the most and try and do something in this sprint stage. He's been close on a couple of occasions and he's been way off in others. So let's see what he can do today, because he is one that's kind of running out of time.
He certainly is moving across from Bora. It's been a couple of years with the Bora Hansgrohe team, of course, after a couple of years with Quick Step. Somebody else suggests, I think that's still Sam Bennett, is actually moving that. The bunch are moving that slowly. It's actually taking quite a lot of time to recapture him. And they're moving across to AG2R Citroën for the next couple of seasons. As that team continues to change and morph. Several very high-profile riders retiring, including Greg Van Avermaet, of course. Moving on, not to pastures new, just hanging up his wheels. What an incredible career Greg Van Avermaet has had. But it'd be interesting to see if he does take any riders with him. So I'm not too sure about the destination of Ryan Mullen. They have come as a bit of a package for a little while, haven't they? And they do a lot together. They're good friends. But I'm wondering what the lead-out train will look like for Sam Bennett over at AG2R Citroën, because they haven't ever really had a top-tier sprinter over the last few years, have they? They've had riders who can sprint a bit, but they've never had an effective lead-out train. It's more for the GC and recently more of a classics team.
Yeah, I think when Greg Van Avermaet went over there and Ollie Nason and these sort of riders, they were looking at the kind of classics, as you already mentioned. But yeah, I thought that exactly the same. Bit of a kind of strange move. But then again, it's who you take with you. It's one of these situations when everybody was going to Total Energies. You thought to yourself, well, that's a kind of different move for the likes of Peter Sagan. But they signed quite a few riders, and he seems kind of happy with that situation. He's moving off the road onto mountain biking now, but it'll be an interest because it's okay signing Sam Bennett, but and a lot of top sprinters, can sprint. But we are talking about the combination of Wout van Aert and Olive Koy here. How important we've seen it in the Tour de France that Morkov is, he's incredible. One of the best lead outs in the world. So I think you need one. Danny Van Poppel, as you mentioned the other day, Matt, what he was doing for Sam Bennett, incredible lead out. So it'll really depend on who's going over, and I think the fact that he's been mentioned, that he's gone over there. I'm pretty sure they'll have a couple of other signings, because I think he'll need at least a lead out. Mullen is that person before the lead out, the person that can take them up there and keep them there. So I think AG2R Citroën will probably announce another couple of riders at least, I would think.
Yeah, you would imagine so. They wouldn't just sign him in isolation, as you quite rightly said. So 5K's into the race now, and our breakaway of 3 riders is firmly established. 2 riders from the... I do like those bikes, as I say. Somebody did get in contact and said about the colour of the bikes of TDT Unibet. It wasn't refreshers. It was fruit salads. The fruit salad chews. That's the colour of the bikes that we're talking about, Brian. Just to get a bit of housekeeping in order in relation to the colour schemes. But we have Kamil Maleki. He sits at 8 minutes and 14 seconds from Poland. In the silver kit of Q36.5 on the front, second wheel at the moment. And we've got Jerome Bloem and Abram Stockman. So Stockman again in the breakaway. I think this is break number 3 for the Belgian. Jerome Bloem sits at 3 seconds, Stockman himself at 22 seconds. As we look a little bit further back into the clutches of the peloton, that's Joshua Giddings. He rides for the development team. Another Lotto. Very powerful rider, good track rider. Again, both of us would have raced with his dad back in the day. Very good track rider and road rider indeed. From I think it's from the Nottinghamshire area. Used to race a lot with his dad back in the day, back into the early 1990s. Nice overhead shot of this very flat landscape. When the wind blows across here, Brian, it gets it's pretty stark. Wouldn't say bleak, but as you can see, almost like a lot of this is basically a fenland. There are lots of marshes, lots of places where you can if you're a twitcher, you're a bird watcher, lots of wonderful places, lots of nature reserves around this neck of the woods as well. But it is exceptionally flat. Just before the only sprint of the day at Burnham-on-Crouch, there are 1 or 2 little undulations before we get to the only categorised climb of the day. That's at Ship Road. Again, just looking at the climbs we have, and because we are in a pretty flat terrain, the climb today is 2.07 kilometres long. But the gradient only 1.3%, so you probably won't even feel they're on a climb. It's that gradual. I think that's the shallowest gradient I've ever seen for a King of the Mountains, Brian. So definitely King of the Drags today. But this will be perfect for James Fouché as well, isn't it? I'm not surprised he didn't get up the road. Pretty much all the points will be taken. And if the situation stays like this, and we get this group out in front for the vast majority of the stage and ultimately taken back, maybe Fouché can just roll across the line, minimal effort to get another singular point, and then potentially get away early tomorrow, take some points to secure that jersey. So perfect riding so far from the Bolt Equities Black Spoke team. And they've really been looking at the teams who've been involved in this race away from Jumbo-Visma. Bolt Equities have really animated this race, got involved, got up there in the sprints. They've done a bit of everything. I think they've, so far for that team, they must be pretty happy what they've done so far, save for a slightly higher stage placing, I think.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Possibly that's what's eluding them, but there's some good sprinters here. The sprints have been kind of dominated, and I really like Rory Townsend, and I think that's the rider that they've been kind of looking at. In the past, he's been up there, won some good bike races. Quality rider. Maybe just not quite there at the moment, but he's very capable of something. And today's another day. there's a lot of sprinters. Lamperti as well hasn't been there and thereabouts. So there's a few that I've got another opportunity here, and okay, sometimes things don't go right, and it's taken 5 stages, and these riders are still kind of chasing that maybe kind of top 4 place. But today is another day, and you have to kind of try and keep positive about things and see what you can do.
Yep. Learn from each stage. Each stage offers a completely different challenge, physically, technically. And then, of course, you've got the slow encroachment of fatigue as we get into day 6. The racing has been overly hard, I think it's fair to say. And although we've had moments of very frenetic racing, if you're just sitting in the wheels, it's certainly not been the hardest race so far. I've been treated to a bunch sprint on every occasion, save for one, and that was yesterday. And that little moment of genius, as the peloton just start to pick things up a little bit here. 1 minute and 54 seconds. Somebody's ratcheted up the pace. I'm wondering if there's been a couple of little attacks here, Brian, because I wouldn't have thought they'd be moving this quickly so early in the race. I think given the distance, given the fact there's only 3 riders out in front, I wouldn't have thought they'd be riding when it got to 2 minutes. So potentially there might be a little bit of attacking in between.
It looks that way. Haven't seen pictures of the front of the peloton. Last time we saw it was kind of across the road. Everybody was happy. There's a lot of people stopping for nature breaks. But like you say, no real big reason, 3 riders in front, why the likes of Joost van Emden and Steven Kruijswijk would want to start their job in earnest, riding at a good speed. So I still think that there'll be a few teams maybe not overly happy with, again, another situation. Very flat stage, and a stage that's pretty much could be suited to the likes of Wout van Aert or Olaf Koy. So they don't want that formidable duo to come to the finish. They have been formidable for the last 5 days. Whether that planned effort yesterday to go with it, they might plan something else today. But when those two come to the finish together, we've been entertained, and we just have to sit back and go, wow, just incredible. So for the other sprinters, if they want to get involved, they have to try and do something about it. And okay, it's easier said than done that take it on from the front, because every sprint has been taken from the front, apart from yesterday, of course, but it's been taken on. We said in the run-in yesterday, Matt, that in that last kilometre, you've got the 2 corners, you want to be at the front there. And a lot of teams were trying to be at the front, and others at 900 metres to go the other day, where they had that right-hand corner where we had that crash. That was the important part of being there at the front. So other teams are trying to take it on, but I think that's what Jumbo-Visma looked at in the first 4 days. Everybody was looking at Olaf Koy's wheel, and that's what played into their hands yesterday. So instead of trying to kind of take it on from the front yourself and getting in front of Jumbo-Visma, I think Affini's job has been brilliant. The fact that he's been able to come up at the right time with that power and just be in the front at the right time.
Yeah, they've got so much further. They're doing everything right, but importantly, what cannot be understated is just the speed with which they can take it up as well when they do move through to the front and gas it. The shape of the peloton completely changes, makes it very hard for anybody to move up as we just go through Great Stanbridge. We're in an area now, well, just passed through a few moments ago, that little town that was called Rochford. It's a town and also a district, 65 square miles of heritage. An absolutely gorgeous place, and they're taking it up already. So Steven Kruijswijk has already picked this up, 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Remember today, slightly shorter, 50 odd Ks shorter than yesterday, so the best part of an hour's less riding. But this area of England isn't too far away from London, really. Pretty easy to get to if you fancy a last-minute day trip. It's to the east of London, just on a headland between the River Thames and the River Crouch, and it's bounded just to the east by the North Sea. So 50 minutes from the centre of London. And both the district and town take their names from Rochefort, Old English, for Ford of the Hunting Dogs. There you go. And it also played a very significant role in both of the World Wars as well. So Southend Airport, just down the road, was used as a training base in 1914 and 15. It was requisitioned by the Air Ministry in August 1939 for use of fighter airfield as well. So lots of history around this neck of the woods. But they want to keep a bit of a lid on this, don't they? That was, I think, one of the reasons that we saw it thin out at the back was because we saw a lot of pinch points through Rochford. And again, slightly shorter stage here, Brian. Fast terrain. They just want to make sure that they're dotting the T's, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and making their job as easy as possible. So nowhere near as big a lead that we saw yesterday. Went up to 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes, nearly touched 4 minutes. But today, 2.5 minutes, as we saw on day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. 2.5 minutes. That's all you're getting, and we're now going to ride it.
It's as if Jumbo-Visma have said, right, we want to get to the finish as quick as possible. Just get it done. Just get there because
exactly.
We're excited about winning another stage. It's we're going to take it up. I don't they've been doing it all week. This time the whole team are up there, but let's see what the other teams come up with. I think we've mentioned it every day. There's certain riders here waiting for the weekend, but this is a kind of last opportunity for the kind of pure sprinters. And it's slightly uphill as well. I thought yesterday would have been a great opportunity for some of them, but they get foiled in the end by our race leader, Wout van Aert.
Yeah, they certainly did. And there he is. Just hidden from view behind the towering figure of Eduardo Affini, 2 minutes and 24 seconds. As the NEG just file by. And the gentleman in the fluorescent orange jerseys. Looks like we've got quite a lot of some of the harvested seeds are being eaten there, of course, by that big. I think they're seagulls there, mate, aren't they? Big lot of seagulls have landed, getting a bit of lunch in them as we continue to wend our way through these fields. This has a slightly different field to the lanes that we were riding in yesterday in Suffolk. A lot more exposed around here. It has the feel in this part of the world, and actually a lot of Essex is like this, isn't it? Very, very flat. But quite exposed. Has the look and feel a little bit of Belgian at times, doesn't it, Brian?
It does. There has been races, but I've never ridden kind of races in this part of the world. I've only ever passed through here and the likes of, the milk race and that. I've driven from the kind of Norfolk into Suffolk and things like that. And as you say, a lot of kind of fens and a lot of the kind of smaller roads have got some subsidence, because I was travelling there when I was doing the comms and this with Hugh Porter not that long ago, and it was in the dark, and we were going along the roads at 60 mile an hour and things like that, and the car was like swaying all over the place and dipping and up and down, and it's as if we got to the hotel and it felt as if you were on a ride at a fun fair afterwards because of the subsidence in a lot of the roads.
Yeah, you've got to be really careful. Again, this sort of area, this fenland, very flat, as you can see. But off to because it's so flat, there's a lot of agriculture that there needs to be, but it tends to get flooded quite a lot. So there's a lot of drainage ditches off to the left and right. And if you get it wrong in the car, you're straight down a ditch around here. You've got to be really careful. There's no buffer really. So if you do just meander off the road by a foot or so, you're straight down a ditch. But as you can see, if the wind were to blow here, just that little ditch before the field there, if the wind were to blow here, it could be split to bits. And you remember a race, although we're not too far away from Essex actually. I think we're in Essex at the moment actually. But remember the Grand Prix of Essex back in the day?
Yeah.
That was slightly
Holstead, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a little bit further north, wasn't it? And slightly hillier terrain, just gently undulating, one or two little kickers. But that was an early season race that sadly is no longer part of the scene. We keep on talking about the big races, the important British races that we've lost, but the Grand Prix of Essex was a race that had been around since the 1950s and was the big early season curtain raiser, although there were races before that was the big Grand Prix race, the big national trophy race that was early in the year, and it had a real classics feel, generally filthy weather conditions, cold, exposed roads, the wind always blew, but it was a really gritty early season open. It was a clean finish on the high street in Halstead, and it had that long drag. And that was one of the first big races as an amateur that I rode in the UK, actually. But fond memories. I can still remember the day and the pain in my legs riding in the wind in the echelons very, very clearly, to be honest with you. But, yep, A race
It
that
was a good
sadly-
race. I
well,
enjoyed
it
it.
was
The
great,
season
wasn't
opener. I can
Yeah.
remember coming all the way down from Scotland to read it,
it?
and
So that's a long drive to Essex. from
yeah,
there.
and it was just a season. It always gives you a test against the best, so you knew where you were, because we didn't have heart rate monitors and power meters and things like that then. So it was a case of you had to test yourself against the best. And looking back at, we used to do 80, 100 miles round the coast in Scotland and things like that, but it tended to be quite flat. And this was before you learned about too much about the interval training and various other things. And I always remember sometimes going down to that racing, and it was fast kicking out corners, and it was really, really hard. But I went back there other times because I knew what I was up against. And even I think it was in 1993, you talked about Rooster, got down there to the race. We couldn't find a bike supplier for the banana team that year, and Keith Lambert, who's the manager, who had the bike shop, he decides, right, I'll get frames made and just put Keith Lambert cycles on them. If nobody's prepared to supply us, we'll do our own, and I'll get the publicity. So it was Rooster, Bob Rouse, that made the bike. So we got there, I jumped on my bike, and there's something felt not right about it. What he'd done is he'd built two bikes, or two frames, for Shane Sutton, who was slightly smaller than me. So I had to ride the Grand Prix of Essex with a slightly smaller bike than I required. It was a case of he built one bike each for all of us to start with, and then another bike. But yeah, he built two of Shane Sutton's bike, and I had to ride a slightly smaller bike in the race. And I also remember that was the first time that we had a helmet sponsor, and we got there and we had helmets, and it's when the first helmets came out, and they were a little bit like just cut out polystyrene.
Oh, I remember. I remember seeing
big,
pictures.
big kind of polystyrene things, and
It
that
looked
was
like
the
a
first
mushroom.
time.
It looked like
Yeah.
a mushroom. I remember the pictures. Yeah.
So I had a mushroom on my head and had a small bit. I think I finished about
Pokemon.
10th or something like that. We were riding for, I think it was Chris Lillywhite or Keith Reynolds or something like that in the sprint. The drag before it dropped down into Halstead in and up. So I think someone had attacked. I think it was Steve Farrow always used to use that as an attack, last ditch attack and go all out. So I think we went there and we were the big team, we were the pro team, and I think we missed out on the win. Someone clipped off over the top of that climb, and I think Chris Lillywhite, we tried to bring it back, and I think Chris Lillywhite was up there in the end, top 3 or something like that. So I think that's when the amateurs and pros came together. That's how far back it was.
That would have been 93 then, Brian, wouldn't it? That was the first time. 92
Possibly.
was the Star Trophy.
Yeah.
And
then we went, you remember the one we went towards, is it Shropshire? We went to a hilly race in Shropshire.
Ooh,
that was the second race, I forget. It was only a one-off race, I think it was. I remember going there. There was a little bit of pressure for the pros to try and win that, because the amateurs had won the first of the Grand Prix of Essex, so I had to oblige in winning that race. That was a very hilly race.
I remember that one. I rode, I think I was 4th or 5th. They had it for a couple of years because Chris Boardman won it one year as well. Chris clipped off 94.
Well, Chris was riding that day as well. I think I eventually got away in a group of 5, and then Rob Harris was the rider I came to the line with.
Well, just old stories of racing in the UK. Of course, things have settled down into this rhythm. Still a long way to go, 128.7 k's to go, as we gradually weave our way through from Southend-on-Sea, ultimately finishing in Harlow today. Harlow itself is just located on the Essex-Hertfordshire border. At 2:10 now, so they're not being given too much leeway at all. Keeping a tight rein on this race, Jumbo-Visma.
Yeah, they have to as well. It's easy to think just let them go, but it's 2 riders that are still up there in the general classification.
Yeah.
You're talking about Bloom at 3 seconds and Stockman at 22 seconds. Mawecki's at 8 minutes and 14 seconds. So it's not a case where sometimes we get in races nobody's up there in the general classification, so they can afford to let them go, and then that would be the perfect scenario, because being a race leader, winning 5 stages already, it would have put the onus on the other teams. But the other teams will be happy that there's someone up there in the general classification, because it means that Jumbo-Visma are forced to ride.
Exactly. 2 riders again from the TDT Unibet cycling team, and in between them, Kamil Malecki of Poland, 27 years of age, rolling through to the front now. Briefly looked like we were going to have Sam Bennett in the mix as well, but he pulled the pin, dropped back to the peloton and thought better of it. I think perhaps they were thinking that little attack would have drawn a few other riders clear. It looked as if Sam Bennett was going to be allowed to get in the move. Sam Bennett himself sits at 2 minutes and 20, so no threat on the general classification. But I think in terms of their aspirations and trying to get something from this race, I wonder if yes, it was definitely for Danny Van Poppel, wasn't it? And I wonder if they've just changed the order now, and it's but with that kick up to the line that we've got, again, it's not an enormous climb or anything, but it's around a 2% drag, we understand. Who do you think, I mean, based on what you've seen so far, we don't know what discussions have gone in the team. Do you think Sam will be given a go again today, or do you think it's all about Danny Van Poppel now?
We were questioning about Movistar yesterday. Why were they riding and they didn't ride before? And it did look as if they went with Canter again. But why would they ride yesterday? I can't understand why. Why would they put a rider up? I tell you what, excuse me, we put, for the first 4 days, we're going to let Jumbo-Visma ride, and we're not going to help them, and we're going to try and sprint against them. But in the 5th day, all of a sudden, they put one rider up. Is it a case of, they want to get some part of publicity, PR, by riding on the fronts? Now, you've got to understand what the methodology of some people thinking in some teams. Because all we see in the races is, the winners and, the riders that ride either in the breakaway or at the front of the peloton mat. So I was scratching my head yesterday. I thought it's because Gaviria, and Gaviria is very capable of going up against the best. He has done it in the past, and he's very capable of doing that. But why would Movistar put one rider up at the front yesterday and not for the first few days?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a strange one. I'm wondering, because Gaviria, one would imagine, would have come into this race as the lead sprinter. He crashed on stage 2, damaged his hand. He's still riding, thankfully. And actually is an integral part of the team, even the lead out dropping off Max Canter. But the only reason I think, just to counter your argument, because it is an interesting question, I'm just thinking maybe they were just preparing Max Canter for the way, okay, you're our leader today and we're going to ride as if you are a leader, because he is the leader, and that's all I can think there. It's a bit of a cliche, commentator's cliche, earning the right to fight, just putting somebody up in the front as a reminder that we're here in the race, we've got a good sprinter. And when you are a sprinter and your team's on the front, changes your thinking a little bit. You can see that the team are working for you. It's not just about the lead out of the end, it's like in the early phases of the race. So you're thinking constantly about the fact that this is all about me. And I'm wondering whether there was more of a psychological element in terms of, because Gaviria isn't 100% for the sprints, because of his hand injury, simple as that. And they're like, and Max Canter's had to step up. They're just doing a little bit extra to put him in that zone, in that place that, okay, it's all about you today, Max. And that's the only reason I can think of it. And also as well, just not wanting to let Jumbo-Visma control the race all the time. That there's two aspects to it. They're the strongest team in the race. They've got the jersey, so they're obliged to ride. But also in doing that, the flip side is that they've got the race by the throat, haven't they? And I think just putting somebody else up there just eases that a little bit. It's almost like mind games, I think, a little bit. I think, okay, you save a resource by not putting somebody at the front, but all Jumbo-Visma do, when they don't see anybody else there, they're not offered any support. I just think it just reinforces their dominance. So I think to mix it up a little bit, put a couple of other riders there, just dilutes that ever so slightly. So we're Movistar, we're here as well, so we're going to put somebody at the front. It's going to help you a little bit. I don't know, it just feels like that in doing that other teams are part and parcel of the race. Otherwise, I just think it ruined. I think the more that teams don't do, the more that Jumbo-Visma potentially just feed off that and become even stronger. And we saw the other day in the finale when Kruijswijk had been on the front, we saw a couple of attacks from the bingo riders straight on it. Not just bringing them back, attacking to bring them straight back. It's just to say, no, this is our race. So that they really have come into this race, with super focus. As we say, it's an A team that they've brought here. And I think it's an enormous mark of respect for the Tour of Britain as well, the way they've come here. Biggest team in the world, Brian, come to the Tour of Britain, and they're tearing it apart. They really are. Okay, only a 3-second time gap, but they've come here ultra focused, and I think that actually says a lot about the prestige of the Tour of Britain as a bike race as well.
The Tour of Britain has always been up there with a lot of teams and riders. They want to come here because good racing and good hotels, they get looked after. We mentioned the other day about the economy, and you can clearly see that this year's edition, maybe not the most exciting of editions, but I'd rather it was here than not. That's the thing. I know the organisers have really kind of struggled this year with the model they've got and the sponsors and things like that, but I'm glad I'm here sitting commentating it than not.
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear. We will, criticise that maybe the route is maybe not the best, but it's, as you know, working in race control, having a small breakaway and having a peloton, it's easier to control that environment rather than make it a little bit hard. And groups everywhere, because there's been stages like that in the past where it could split into 4 or 5 different groups. So the organisers are under a little bit of pressure, I would think, financially, and they're dictated by the areas that want that stage. They pay for the stage. Okay, we've had a Howdens sponsored one of the stages, but that was a kind of one-off. I'm not too sure if any of the other stages have been sponsored. It's mostly the local areas and towns, and they say we would like it round here. And I think starting and finishing in the same place is quite good. Going out there and doing a loop in the same area. So I'd rather be commentating the race than not. And we have come the finishes, maybe the race and 3 riders in front yet again for the 3rd day in a row. Jumbo-Visma's chasing at the front. Maybe it was a case of Rodriguez goes up to the front and puts a little bit more pressure on Canter to sprint at the end. Did it help? Well, I think the only people that did help was Jumbo-Visma, and I think the Dominus, you don't want to really help them. Is it a visual thing where they're not in the race and they're not getting up there, not getting the big results that's required from a big team like that? It's just having that kind of presence at the front. It might be, but at the same time, we've got a Tour of Britain. We've missed a couple of races this year, the Tour Series and the Women's Tour, and I do hope that they come back. But at the end of the day, it's something that we have to address in this part of the world, purely because that we're needing races like this, because in the past, I don't know if you were about there as a cyclist, but we had the milk race. There never used to be a professional race in this country. We had a one day every now and again. We had the Leeds, the Wincanton one day, but we don't have a lot of big races in this part of the world. And let's not talk about the domestic scene, but we don't have big races. When you consider other countries, the amount of racing that are there, it's incredible.
Yeah, well, a couple have gone. We obviously had with the Tour of Britain, this is the 19th edition of the race. Only missed one edition due to the COVID pandemic, but we did have the Tour of Yorkshire for several years. Off the back, of course, it was a legacy event essentially run by ASO, following the Tour de France. Then we used to have several, and then there were 1 or 2 1.2s, which is the basically UCI lowest ranked single day classics. And I think Cycle Classic is a 1.2. I think that's back to UCI again, I think. But we used to have several of those. But back to the early 90s and the 1980s, really, they were the halcyon days of racing in Great Britain. We had several smaller stage races, but pros used to come over. And as Brian said, we did actually have what would the equivalent now would be a World Tour race. We had a single-day classic which moved around. It was in the south of England, the Wincanton Classic, as Brian said. But it moved around. It was then called the Leeds Classic, essentially the same race, but moving around the country, wasn't it, in the early to mid-90s. And one edition was actually won by Max Sciandri, who's in the team car for Movistar in this race. And one of those, I rode the Leeds Classic in 1996, went up 2 ascents of Holm Moss over its 260k distance. So some of the biggest riders in the world came across to ride that one. But yeah, there's not. This is it. This is the only race we have now, apart from I think one race, which is a 1.2. But let's just have a look back at where the race has been and where the race is heading to. Of course, we're heading to Harlow today and making our way through these lovely Essex lanes. But we started off in Altrincham, the Grand Depart, and then we finished in Manchester on the opening stage. Olaf Koy took that one. Well, he took every single stage. We then moved to some very familiar roads for both me and Brian, Wrexham to Wrexham. He did that clockwise loop out of Wrexham, looping back through the beautiful Cheshire lanes, the scenes and the locations for many of my training roads when I was riding. So Wrexham to Wrexham, and then we were up in the north-east, or the south part of north-east, Gould to Beverley. Some rolling terrain there, again taken by Olaf Koy. Then we were back in Nottinghamshire, Sherwood Forest to Newark-on-Trent. Yesterday we ventured south, Felixstowe to Felixstowe, and that was taken by Wout van Aert in fine style. And if you are watching this and you haven't seen that stage finish, well, actually, and you can do it. You can watch them all on catch-ups. Definitely worth watching. Actually, all the bunch sprints have been sensational. One or two have been a little bit sketchy. The one into Wrexham was the sketchiest, very narrow finish, super technical, a nasty crash that befell one of the team at DSM riders. But he's up and riding still. Yeah, different sorts of finishes. Each one has been pretty spectacular. But then yesterday's stage, I think, was my favourite, and witnessed as well, importantly, by an absolutely enormous crowd in Felixstowe, who saw them ride off, and then 4.5 hours later saw them ride back down at the seafront. But the crowds, every single finish, Brian, it's fair to say, back to Manchester yesterday, every single finish line has been densely packed with thousands and thousands of people, especially yesterday. That was an impressive sight, and a reminder that when we do put races on, they will always be very well supported by the public.
Well, that's what I mentioned just before, Matt, that you when you look at the crowds, and okay, the racing might not be that entertaining, and the routes and one sprint and very few real hills and climbs and things like that. I'd rather it be on than not, and the crowds are still coming out to support. Exactly. So it's one of these situations. It's okay, and to pick holes out of events and different things. But I'm just so glad that it's on, and I'm pretty sure everybody. We often bike races are not liked by certain people, sometimes farmers as well. They don't like it, and road closures, all that sort of stuff. But in general, it looks as if most people are embracing it and coming out and enjoying the sight and the sounds of the Tour of Britain.
Yeah, they certainly are. Slightly less populated today, a bit more sparse in terms of the towns and villages that we pass through. And as we go over a little narrow pinch point, very narrow bridge, that was just wide enough for one car to get through. Here's our three leaders. Here's the sorts of crowds that we're talking about. Look, we've got a mini Beefeaters corner there on the right-hand side.
I think they planned it. I think they're going to be at 3 areas, I believe.
Ah, right. Well, you can today. You can actually. The good thing about the course today, if you have got a good bit of knowledge about the area and the amount of country lanes that crisscross just our road network. I mean, we've got lots and lots of roads, lots of small country lanes. You can actually knit this course together, because the opening first half of the race is essentially just switchbacks through the countryside, so you can cut across and see the race on several occasions. So that's clearly what they're going to do today.
Do you want to explain who the Beefeaters are and what they do?
Do you want to explain? Because you sound like I do know. I think I know who they are. I know what the Beefeaters are. They're at London Bridge, aren't they? They're the keepers at London Bridge. But are they actual Beefeaters, or are they people dressed up as beefeaters?
Yeah, people dressed up as beefeaters.
There we go.
It goes when you look at the Tour de France, biggest annual sporting event in the world, and you've got kind of Dutch corner where all the Dutch go and drink beer and be jolly, and then you've got Irish corner as well, and you've got people trying to do it, and the Brits have always been there, but never had their own kind of space, so they've dressed up as beefeaters because that's traditional. It looks no British, and they he's almost stopped taking that bottle, just making sure he gets it. So yeah, they announce where they're going to be. They've kind of built it up, and if you want to go to a certain tour stage or something like that, they'll be there, and they have a sound system. They dance, they entertain the crowd, and just have a bit of a sing along. And because it can be a long waiting for bike races, as you've probably witnessed yourself. Okay, the Tour de France is its own caravan, but they just entertain you. So dancing and singing, and you come away after having a complete day rather than just a flash of the peloton going by, but most of the time they're on a climb, on a certain part of a climb, so at least they'll get to see the riders going past over maybe half an hour at times. But yeah, they'll entertain you and just have a wee dance and a sing. There. Hey boys.
Yeah, they've got a social media account that gives you information about where they're going to be and what they're going to do, what they're going to do. I've spoken to a couple of them actually at the Tour de France. I think it was last year, but I wasn't sure whether because anybody watching doesn't really know what a beefeater is. Is basically it's a tradition. They're the
someone
keepers.
Eats beef.
Yeah, it's not just somebody who eats beef. And I don't know where the origins of the name came from, but basically they're in the Tower of London. They're the official keepers of the Tower of London, who the tradition goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, and they're basically keeping on that tradition. It's purely decorative, purely for show nowadays. But people who are actual beef keepers, it is their job. Back in the day, it was a far more important role, and now it's just keeping that tradition, and part of the pageantry really of what we have in terms of our castles and our national heritage. But they're quite amusing. But they're a lovely bunch of people who love their bike racing. But today, we just saw a few moments ago the temperature, 31 degrees on the screen, 32 degrees on the motorbike. I certainly wouldn't want to be dressed up as a beefeater today, Brian, as well. And hopefully they might, as they're flitting between spots, they might get changed. As we get a close-up of the drivetrain there on
just to add to that, they're actually called yeoman warders, and they're known as beefeaters. They're the ceremonial gardens of the Tower of London, pretty much safeguarding the British Crown jewels and looking after many of the prisoners in the Tower.
Yeah, okay. There's not that many prisoners in the Tower anymore. Actually, there's none, but it's cracking. I don't know if you've ever been to the Tower of London, but it is absolutely amazing. It really, really is. But yeah, that's what they used to do. If you look it up, there's some very famous people who've been imprisoned, incarcerated for their sins, or not, depending on your point of view, depending on your political allegiances. Back in the Middle Ages, it was definitely a place that you were taken, quite often before you were executed. There's a real darkness to that place as well. It's plenty of places around the Tower of London, Tower Bridge, London Dungeons. I mean, wonderfully historic, but actually ridiculously dark. As we look at this man, Wout van Aert, looking good in the blue and red jersey. He looked good yesterday, didn't he? You can just see he's still running that singular chainring at the front as well. So they're using the one-by system, which is
looking rather nimble.
Popular. He is looking, yes, using the old nimble shoes there. But you're using a one-by system, and anybody wondering what is that? A lot of you at home will know what a one-by system is, but basically, rather than having two chain rings at the front, you're just running one. and a very wide ratio block at the back. But on a stage like this, Brian, it won't actually need to be a particularly wide ratio, will it? It can be a pretty close ratio block, hardly any elevation at all. There is 1,000 metres spread throughout the day, these little gentle ripples spread over the 146 Ks.
Well, in another day we'd put on a straight through block, wouldn't we?
We would have done. Today would have been, well, back when we started, maybe just a 13. I didn't really use a 12 until we had a bit more space, a few more gears on the back. So a 13.21, I think, is what I've used. So maybe a jump of 1. You'd never really use the 21 unless you want a steep climb, but it just meant you could run the chain on the 53.19. So 7-speed block was what I think. I started racing on a 6-speed block at the back, and then went on to 7, and now they're running 12 at the back, aren't they? Yeah, the bike technology now, I mean, it's absolutely incredible, the gearing ratios. And but also, riders because the ranges of gears that riders are using now, Brian, the climbing's different. They're climbing in a completely different way. When we were racing as pros, even just 20 years ago, back at the back end of the 90s, early 2000s, the ratios that riders are using now completely different to what we had. Even back then, 39.25 was all you really had. I mean, that's all I had for the Duro. That was the lowest gear, 39.25. And now that would be considered quite a big gear. Now you're looking at 34, 32 is commonplace for the big mountains. And so riding in the mountains was quite often, and you didn't know any different, it was like weight training, wasn't it? You never really, unless it was a long gradual slope, it was a steep route, it was like doing weights. And I quite often didn't use my last gear, so I'd ride on the 23 a lot of the time, because just in case I blew, I always had an emergency gear. So I thought, if I go onto the lowest sprocket, I had nowhere else to go. So it really, I just remember climbing back in the day. It was just like weights, and now seeing the riders spinning these low gears on the climbs, it's like, wow. It's
you go back further.
Different.
You go back further, and I think it's changed the look of riders. They used to walk up some of the steeper parts of the climbs way back in the black and white days, and they used to heave themselves up these climbs in the mountains purely because the gear ratios. And like you, I grew up with 42.21 in some of the steep climbs, and it was painful. Again, going over the Stelvio and Mortarolo, and one day going over these climbs and 39.23 and things like that. Now it's crazy gears.
Yep. Yeah, super low options. Basically, we've just seen mountain biking gears basically come across onto the road, giving you big, wide ratios, and then some of the systems. My Flemish is not existent, so I couldn't tell you what was being said there. It's maybe relaying information about what's happening behind. I'll have images in the car, of course. Information from race radio as well. Again, I guess just keep going. The peloton are riding behind, as you can see, forcing these riders to keep on pressing on. That was a bit of a joke in a play as well, putting some ice down his neck. Earlier, just plus 30 degrees today, as we were talking about early on. Very, very warm. Rob Harmeling actually rode the milk race with us, didn't he? I'm just thinking back, he would have ridden the milk race for the Netherlands team, I think. Do you remember who had the mix of amateurs and pros? I'm sure Rob Harmeling rode the milk race back in the day when we rode, Brian.
Well, he's a sport. He rides. When he used to race his bike, he was exactly like that. He's very vocal. Is Mr. Hammonds. I have to put up with him every day. Working with Matt Stevens. Oh, we can always find something to talk about, can't we, Matt?
I remember doing the Tour de l'Avenir with Rog Hammond. He came around my house and we were to drive to the port to meet the GB team, and he came in a Mini, and we drove in Rog Hammond's Mini with 2 bikes in the back and 2 massive kit bags. I don't know how the heck we fitted everything in, but and this was before you got the souped up Minis, which are actually quite big cars. This was a Mini, and we had 2 full bikes in the back, 2 full kit bags, and then we drove down to meet the team for the Tour de l'Avenir in 1994. But yeah, a lot of racing with Roger before he turned pro, and then subsequently when he turned pro. Fantastic bike rider, but really good tactician as well. Has been on the scene for a long time now with various teams.
Another rider that cyclocross to roads.
Yeah,
seems quite popular now.
Well, was world champion, wasn't he? It was 1990. He was the world junior cyclocross champion back in the day, and that was back when. Do you remember when there was a differential in the way the stripes were? So if you were a junior world champion on the track or on the road, it was a V stripe. Yeah, it wasn't across the chest. It was basically so it finished in a V. That's a good trivia question. What year did juniors get the bands across the chest for the very first time? So if anybody wants to get in touch, at Bryce Smithy, at Real Stevens on Twitter. If you know the answer to that one, I certainly don't know, but I think it would have been around the mid-1990s, I think. As we get a close-up study of Mr. Tom Pidcock. Getting the job done today. A bit of stretching going on here. I think it's actually just trying to turn on his radio. It's Jerome Bloom in the breakaway, 23 years of age.
I think if Rob's in the car, he's probably trying to turn it off, Mark.
Get that off. I remember a few times when he used to use the radio and I wasn't having a great day, and have you ever just done that, pulled it out your ear or just said it's not working, just turned it off? I have, I must admit.
Well, my career started in the kind of mid-90s. That's when the radios come in, so I never had radios for too long. It was I had to think in races and make decisions pretty much myself, so that's where I learned a lot. Nowadays the riders pretty much are kind of told what to do, but on occasions, because you're in that car and there's a delay of 30-40 seconds in any TV, if you actually get the TV working, you get a good signal. It's too late in the final, too late at certain points, so you really have to think for yourself sometimes.
No, you certainly do. Yeah, most of my career was completely without radios, but then when I rode at the highest level, I was with radios. It went back to racing domestically, and we had them for a couple of races, but not very often. But I know the technology is far better, but they still can be quite problematic. And some riders like them, some don't. But key. I mean, from a safety perspective, I think they're massively important. But now they are part and parcel of racing, not used, of course, with the under-23s. I was commentating the other week on the Tour de l'Avenir, and I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it, but there's so much racing on over the summer after the Tour. There was, I think on GCN Plus here and on Discovery Plus, I think there were some days where there was 5 different sets of commentators and 5 races. There was so much going on over the summer, wasn't there? But the Tour de l'Avenir was the first time we showed it. Every stage, all 9 stages over the 8 days. So we had 2 stages in the morning of the Saturday before the finish. But the racing was absolutely fantastic. A little bit of everything: an individual time trial, team time trial, flat stages, punchy stages, and then big mountain stages. But what I noticed was these are riders that are learning their trade, learning their craft, and quite often they were riding blind as well because they had no radios, and you could see these are riders.
With their eyes closed.
They weren't totally riding blind, but yeah, they weren't riding with their eyes closed, thank goodness. But it was just interesting looking at the tactics and the fact that we're having to make decisions on the road, and the fact you start the day, like back in the milk race days or back, in the early Tour of Britain days, you start the day with a plan, and yes, you would drop back to the team car, but a lot of it was, you learned very quickly to make decisions, and a lot of the decisions you made were wrong, but I really quite like that, and I'm not bemoaning that at all. It's just comparing having radios and not having radios. I think it's fantastic that at the under 23 level they don't use radios. They learn their craft out on the road, each race, at the end of each race, there's going to be a big debrief, what they did right, what they did wrong. But it was just quite a chaotic race, is what my point is. It was a brilliant race, so entertaining, and we were looking at some of the decisions that were made on the road. But and the reason we were quite critical was because we were looking at them through eyes that are so used to seeing races dictated by, because they've got radios and they're passed on information. And in that particular race, as soon as it started to break up at the front, they were just riding on what they could see around them, and because they couldn't get team cars through to the front. And it was quite refreshing, actually. It was a fair. If you get a chance to, you can watch it on catch up on GCN Plus. Watch the last couple of stages. He's absolutely brilliant, won by a young Mexican rider, first Mexican to win the Tour de l'Avenir, and he'll be moving up. Don't know where he's going next year, yeah, it was quite refreshing to watch the Tour de l'Avenir and the slightly different style of racing. Just reminded me of racing as a junior back in the day. Just everybody attacking.
That's what we were brought up. We were brought up with that. If you got in a breakaway and you were in the peloton, you had to rely on just people at the side of the road. They would shout 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 1 minute, and the one race that used to be one of the oldest races, it's sad that it's not around anymore, was Glasgow Dunoon. I remember for the first time racing that, and there was a breakaway of 9 riders away at Strucker, which is about 10 miles from the finish or something like that. And I went back to the Jerry McDade in the team car, in the commissaire car behind, and just asked, what is the time gap? 2.5 minutes, he said. So they had some sort of kind of communication, and you were able to get some information, but apart from that, you were just really thinking, seeing what was in front of you, because you were, riding blind, as you say.
Yeah, it's a good way of learning, but that's all you had. I mean, but now it is different, but we're still getting some magnificently entertaining racing over the last few years. Yeah, it's a sport that I absolutely adore. But today, ever so slightly formulaic. Got that break up the road, and Jumbo-Visma are doing what they do.
Who are these guys at the front? Do you recognise them?
I don't know what. I'm not too sure who this is. It looks like it might be Steven Kruijswijk, I think, on the front now. Yeah, we've got to know them very well over the last few days, haven't we? Jos van Imden and Steven Kruijswijk setting that tempo up. This little drag there, just touching 400 watts, just showing you what it takes to ride at this level. And just to drag the bunch along, because again, the group in front are doing a good job, but their lead is starting to come down. 104 k's to go. 1 minute and 24 seconds for our 3 leaders. Jeroen Bloem of the Netherlands, with him for company Abram Stockman, both from the same team, TDT Univet cycling team, and also in the mix Kamil Maleki of the Q36.5 Pro cycling team, best placed of the 3 riders in front, and by virtue of that placing, is actually in the virtual lead of the race right now. He's only 3 seconds behind the race leader, Wout van Aert, and that's Jeroen Bloem. But it is a fellow Dutchman who is doing the riding behind now, stringing this group along. And again, Brian, there's been hardly the word piano. It doesn't seem to be around anymore, does it? There was a brief, maybe 3 k's, maybe 4 kilometres of riding steady. But you've just, given how strong the riders are out in front now these days, the standard right the way through all the 3 divisions and every rider in this field. Okay, there's a big spread of talent and ability, but generally speaking, the standard is very high. And in the modern era, you can't really afford, with these smaller teams now and a particularly finite resource with the riders, 6 riders here, you've got to protect a couple of riders for the finish. That's why we're seeing only small breaks. If it was a 7 or 8 man group that went clear, it'd be very hard to pull back. That is for sure. So it's a mark of respect for the strength of the riders out in front that Jumbo-Visma are having to ride like this. And both of these riders on the front, Kruijswijk and Van Emden, putting in another big stint.
Not a lot you can do when this is the situation in the race. We saw it over the last few days, and we're thinking that maybe some of the teams would come up and try and do something. Bingo was one of the teams that tried to do something, but when they're riding at this speed, there's not a lot you can do. You might be able to get down the road slightly, and then all of a sudden, you're brought back. But yeah, not a lot you can do.
No, not much at all. Just on a little drag now.
they're taking it really easy, aren't they? They're saving absolutely everything.
Yeah, they're just knocking it back a little bit on this climb. As I say, we're coming towards the first intermediate sprint, and the profile is hardly a ripple on it, but what ripples there are, we are now coming up to one. So this is actually a reasonable climb, and I think the climb they're on now is probably far harder than the actual categorised climb later on. The climb of Ship Road, remember, gave you the details of 2Ks at only 1.3% average. Although the way they've measured it is quite an odd one. It starts off with a descent and then picks up, so a rather unorthodox measuring technique for Ship Road, but that's your stats. So the climb itself probably nearer 4%, but definitely on a slight rise here. And if they do ease off a little bit, I mean, the bunch aren't going to want to catch them, so it's quite clever riding, isn't it? And smart riding by the break in front. Knock it off on these little steep climbs, keep it together, and gently squeeze it over the top. The second part of this race, we are going to be moving into just a gentle headwind as well. The wind coming today from the southwest, but as we saw before, out to sea, looking out to sea from Southend, hardly a ripple at all. It was like a mill pond. And as you can see, the foliage to the left and to the right, very still. Slightly occluded day today, not quite the same frequency of light, but very warm. Quite often when it's like this, it's exceptionally muggy. So eating, drinking, massively important when we get to 30 degrees. We saw lots of riders yesterday actually dousing themselves with water at the back end, especially when the tempo starts to rise. And often as we've gone through the feed here, Brian, it's Jumbo-Visma want to make sure that everybody's fed and watered as well. Quite often just before the feed they might lift up the pace for a bit for the lead just to come down, then they can ease off through the feed and then just pick it up again over the top. It's just a technique that we see quite often, just so they don't lose too much time on the group in front. They don't have to pick it up too much, so they're buying themselves a little bit of time now to let this group go away. As you go through a nice vineyard there. Just an illustration of what we were talking about before. A lot of marshlands, flat fen-like area, a lot of agriculture. But yeah, knocked it off just a little bit, just to allow everybody to make sure we've got enough food. And there's a big attack here. Well, here's a move. Well, that's Alexander Richardson has gone. This is livening things up. Richardson, there goes. The gap under a minute, if you just pass through the feed zone, latching on to the wheel of the Mountain St. Piran, the Unibet cycling team. And also in the mix there, Fredrik Versnes, the Norwegian champion. Bora also there too. A little look behind. And that one's come to nothing, but an interesting little move there.
Yeah, Van Poppel interested in that one. Tiller. Johannesson. A lot of the Uno X. You can see the intent there a little bit, that a few of these teams are waiting or wanting something to happen, but
yeah,
like I said a moment ago, that when you're riding at that tempo, it's very difficult. They knocked it off a little bit, and that's why we saw that attack there, but when they're riding at a hard tempo, it's very difficult, and they're hoping this continues, this instigates something and we see a little bit of racing.
I don't know why though. I cannot understand why. Well, it's split here, which is good. Little attack there from Team Flanders, Balois, but Uno X, yeah, there we go. A couple of Uno X riders in there. Ineos Grenadiers, Movistar represented as well. But the fact we've got Jumbo-Visma in this little move suggests to me this one isn't going to go clear. But all this attacking, this number 5 just rolling through that. So Gregor Mühlberger recently had a win in the Deutschland Tour just a couple of weeks ago. A man in good form. Watch out for him tomorrow. We've got some good options at Movistar as we head into the hillier terrain over the weekend. Gonzalo Serrano has been very active too, last year's race winner in the shortened event, of course. But that little flurry of activity, Brian, unsurprisingly, has slashed to lead to riders out in front. And are we going to enter a new phase of racing here? Will that prove to be a catalyst to essentially reset the race? And that's the last thing that Jumbo-Visma want, isn't it? This is perfect for them right now.
It is perfect for them, and we're hoping this would happen. I think we've been talking about this over the last few days, haven't we, Matt? That maybe it just needs to be ignited. Just don't allow Jumbo-Visma to control things like they are doing now. So yeah, I hope it continues, but it needs quite a few teams to get involved here.
Yep. And things have hotted up a little bit on the front. You can just see. Well, that was interesting. We had Team Flanders Balois wanted to pick things up, and then the door was shut there by Jumbo-Visma. Nathan Van Hooydonk just latches onto the wheel of the man in the white and yellow as they drag it out. 17 seconds now. This looks like it might be a concerted attempt to try and bring this race back and actually open things up again. Jos van Emden is almost like...
Yeah, this is sitting next to him.
Yeah, look at that. It's almost, I wouldn't call it intimidatory tactics, but basically saying it's like a staring competition, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just riding alongside him, almost asking the question, what are you doing? This is good though. I like this. As again, I've got nothing at all against Jumbo-Visma. I'm full of admiration for the team, but I do like it when other teams are disruptive, just breaking the status quo, mixing things up a little bit, creating a little bit of excitement and unpredictability. That's what bike racing is all about. You can't do it all the time. That would be churlish to suggest that you could. But as we head into the weekend, less and less opportunities to actually do something in this race. Let's see it being mixed up a bit, and we're seeing that right now. Our 3 leaders out in front had a maximum lead of 2.5 minutes. That's now come down to just 10 seconds, and we've still got 99 kilometres to go. And now St. Piran also in the mix as well.
Yeah, it looks like Urinstat there as well. But this is something I learned many years ago from Phil Anderson, actually, that there's a group up the road and it was getting into double figures. And of course we didn't want to chase, but we wanted to bring the gap down. And he said, right, we start attacking one at a time. You know, when one rider is brought back, go again and just start something. So we did, and all of a sudden others got involved and the gap came right down and it was more manageable and it kind of racing started. So this is what they're trying to do now, is to try and instigate something else, not just give Jumbo-Visma an easy time of it. And it's good to see Flanders, St. Piran, Uno X all getting in the mix here, because it needs multiple teams. We cannot just have one team try this.
Exactly. Alex Coleman now moves clear. Again, one of the riders who sits on the same time as Wout van Aert. So Coleman now moving off the front. You are quite right. It's only Uno X, Team Flanders Balois and St. Piran who are attacking at the moment. And that's well, the break is about to be caught. So Coleman dragging himself across to the move. It looks like it's definitely right from Uno X coming across the gap there. And a surprising glance round from Bloem and Stockman, because they've got reinforcements. Now, this is quite interesting. If there's 5 or 6 riders up in front on this flat circuit, this is exactly what Jumbo-Visma will not want. They won't want these 5 riders to move clear now. With fresh legs and reinforcements, just makes it a little bit harder, doesn't it?
You can see Stockman, he was just waiting for Coleman to get onto the wheel, and he's looking around there in 2 minds whether to wait for this Uno X rider. So as soon as he went to the front, or Coleman joined, Stockman tried to go a little bit, pushed on a little bit. So they're wanting reinforcements and they're waiting. Yep. Look, Stockman, they're wanting that Uno X rider to get across. And then St. Piran, they are trying to kind of move up. They are wanting to get into the breakaway today. No, 5's enough, not 6.
Well, this is interesting. If nobody shuts this Jumbo-Visma rider down too, we could end up with Jumbo-Visma in the front and another team having to try and bring things back together. So this is interesting. And there you go, straight away as we head towards the sprint, it was Bora Hansgrohe, because the elastic snapped there. And now we've got Ineos Grenadiers getting involved as well. 10 seconds is the lead. Alex Coleman on the front now. This is a bit more exciting now. An interesting part of the race now. 96.8 k's to go. Coming toward the intermediate sprint. Remember, no time bonuses. Just points towards the green jersey classification.
It's like they've drawn a line again. They started and it was like this active start. And now we've started again. And it was all instigated with that Alex Richardson attack there. So hopefully this continues from 3. We now have 5. Coleman, and I think it is Urinstat. It's made the breakaway for Uno X, but St. Piran kind of missed out on this one. They kind of instigated things and they really want to get involved in the mix, but unfortunately for them, Jumbo-Visma have decided 5 is maximum. We don't want any more.
St. Piran have gone, and as you say, they're straight on the wheel. The points there taken by Stockman, I think that was, rolled across the line. So we now have an interesting situation. We have 5 riders out in front, 3 have been joined by 2. And this is the situation behind. There's a bit of remonstrating here between one of the St.
I'd be the same. Why you let them go and not us?
Yeah.
You know, what's the difference going to be for me? Just, you know, it's clear to Jumbo-Visma that just let one St. Piran go, but you can understand Jumbo-Visma. It's another pair of legs up there, so you don't want that. Exactly. 3's perfect. 5 is bordering on. No, that's enough. So this is what they're doing, and I would do completely the same from both Jumbo-Visma and the same for St. Piran. Why not just let me go? We just want one rider in the breakaway, but unfortunately for them, there's 5 already there, and that's too much.
Well, this is great. Spora Hansgrohe getting involved as well, straight over the top. This is making things a little bit more interesting. It looks like that is the figure of Ada Schelling trying to go across the gap. It is indeed. Huge gears been turning. Sits back down the Dutchman, 25 years of age, trying to get across this gap. Ada Schelling is...
That's not going to be allowed.
It's not going to be allowed, but he's at 3:37. But it's not so much the time gap. It's not so much the threat. It's the fact the group in front's too strong. And this is great. This is interesting racing for the neutrals. Not nice for Jumbo-Visma because they've got to work hard. But as you say, they're doing exactly the right thing, shutting things down. That's bike racing. It can be massively frustrating, but you cannot criticise Jumbo-Visma. They're leading this race, and they don't want to let a big break go clear like this. And what we have now, Brian, with 94 Ks to go, is a hard reset. So we had a break of 3. It looked like it was going to be a very formulaic stage. And here we go, all back together. Gruppo compatto.
See, for St. Piran, this is the time to go. Don't look behind. This is the time to go. Because Jumbo-Visma will let you go. They're just worried about the numbers at the moment. So the St. Piran rider that's there, go now, because they won't chase you down. Because this is a moment for you. It's coming all back together, but this is the time to go for St. Piran if you're listening, because there's nobody in front now. Absolutely nobody in front. So they will allow 3, maximum 5. So the reason why they weren't allowing St. Piran to go before that would have been 6, and they don't want that. So now is the time to go, St. Piran, if you want to get in the second breakaway of the day.
That's it. Now the racing is open again. High speeds as we move through the lanes now. 93.6 Ks to go. Into a gentle headwind now. TDT Unibet cycling team also
this
involved.
is the time. Go with it.
This is it. This is when somebody needs to get in the move. 2 men. This is ideal right now. And again, it looks like it's actually Malecki again coming across the gap there for Q36.5 Pro Cycling. The Polish rider clearly got good legs today. And he's been shut down straight away. It's far easier. You can just see there is that little... It's only a gentle wind, but it does make a difference. Makes that little bit harder to open up a gap, but far easier once you've jumped on the wheel. When the gap's open, it's harder to shut, but right now, sitting on the wheel, you're saving a lot of energy because of that little bit of a gentle headwind that we've got. But it's only a slender lead for the 2 riders out in front.
There's a strange one there, because the Norwegian champion just went, he's got Uringstad already there, so I don't understand. Maybe they want 2 in the break, but I'll say it again, time to go. St. Piran, if you want in the breakaway now's a big opportunity.
Yeah, and this is where Jumbo-Visma have got to be very attentive, and they are being very attentive, is just watching the little moves that go. And just at this particular time, if they do it right, the momentum of the racing could carry us 10 or 15 Ks down the road without anything actually happening. So if you're smart and you manage this situation, weirdly, you can actually save a little bit of energy by just following the wheels, and but just keeping an eye and making sure that a big break doesn't sort of coalesce in front. They're the really dangerous ones when you've got one like here. This is dangerous now. I say dangerous in terms of a break becoming a size that's a little bit unmanageable. Team DSM also in the mix now on the front. Accelerate out this little corner. Also there in that light blue kit. Another one of the squads as well, Kern Farmer as well. As we thread our way through this little town. This is an interesting little move. 5 or 6 riders here. Yep.
6 riders here, and it's been. Why has it been closed down by Bolton Equities? Why did you not leave it up to Jumbo-Visma?
Or just jump? Yeah. This is what I mean. This is perfect for Jumbo-Visma because this is just the natural pace of the race. The ebb and flow of the race gives the an additional couple of k's an hour to the average speed. They could just float around on the wheels, watch what's going on, and then use other teams. Although it might not have been the wisest thing to do. Or a lot of teams want a piece of the action. There's a small split that's occurred here. Now, this is a very, very interesting. Did not expect this to happen, and I'm glad it has.
I think we were hoping.
Yeah, I'm glad it has.
We've been hoping this for the last few days.
Yep.
Let's come back together. Another opportunity. Is it go now?
Yes, Jack Rookin Gray, this is on the front, I think, just moving through. It's like a potential little stealth manoeuvre. DSM also just latching on to the back wheel of the Unibet cycling team rider. Great Britain in the mix there too. Also moving up Connor Swift from the Ineos Grenadiers in the red, just making sure that they're keeping an eye on things as well. So totally flat. So this mid-section of the race between kilometre 60 and kilometre 80 is arguably the flattest part of the race. Once we start to head towards the only categorised climb of the day, it gets a bit more rolling, but right now it is absolutely pan flat as St Piran again go on the offensive on the right hand side of the road. Good
move. His teammate was at the front there, and he was getting an acceleration from one of the Unibet riders. So yeah, this is good, because they know that Jumbo-Visma will allow 3 to 5 riders. They won't let any more than that, and that was the problem before. There was just 5 riders in front, so they will allow that to go. There's Cairn Pharma and Unibet, so you can see that Jumbo-Visma, they're quite happy. Just let that go out there. That's now another group of 3. It's whether anybody else wants to try and get in that breakaway. So you can see the Jumbo-Visma rider, I think it's Nathan van Hooydonk, he's quite happy to allow these go, and nice and slowly. He won't kind of shut this one down. So if you want to get in the breakaway, now is a good time, because it looks as if, it's forming again, another 3-man group.
Yeah, well, actually, that little counter-attack has actually been brought back. Yeah, it goes again. It looks like that's actually Abram Stockman again. Another man with very strong legs at the moment, clearly feeling good. Been in and amongst the action over the last few days, very active. Voted the most aggressive rider a few days ago when he was in the breakaway. But St Piran provided the catalyst. It was the attack of Alexander Richardson about 25 minutes ago approximately that started this all off again. He was brought back immediately, and then Uno X got in the mix. Team Flanders Baloise in particular too. And now St Piran just off the front, but only just a handful of seconds. But this is good stuff.
Yeah, he just has to commit to this and hope that he's joined by someone. And I think he will. Unibet are trying again, and he'll be allowed to go. Maybe one other rider will be allowed to go before they kind of start to look at this. But, from not being in the breakaway, St Piran looks as if they will have a rider in this kind of reincarnation of the break of the day.
Reincarnation,
Stockman, yeah. Stockman could be, making his way forward again. Maybe another rider looks as if they're trying to go. But Tidball here just has to kind of concentrate and hope he's joined soon.
Yep, there's confirmation of the only sprint of the day at Burnham Crouch, the cottages.com sprint. Abram Stockman took maximum points ahead of Martin Urienstad, Alex Coleman, Kamil Malecki and Duran Bluem. So that doesn't really cause too much difference at the top of the green jersey classification.
Oh, they have to do things in twos, don't they?
They certainly do. And there's also a rod from Cairn Pharma trying to get across the gap as well. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? We saw there's a couple of other teams now. As this break's forming, teams that were active a minute ago and trying to start things off, Uno X and Team Flanders Baloise, now aren't involved. That's quite interesting. They had an opportunity there to try and get in the mix again, and they haven't. It's not to say that this phase is over yet. And that was an exceptionally long zoom, wasn't it? There's the peloton moving at a pace through these Essex country lanes. Still Tidball out in front.
Another St Piran rider with the Cairn Pharma. So this is maximum for Jumbo-Visma. They'll be happy-ish with this. The only thing that will concern them at the moment is there's only 87.5 kilometres to go.
Yeah.
So you've got some fresher legs. If that's Stockman, then you've got some fresh legs and some, less fresher legs. But they're happy with that number. They want it to settle down, so they don't want certain teams to be in there. So they've decided, maximum 5, and now it looks as if there's 5. 2 from Unibet, 2 from St Piran, and 1 from Cairn Farmer.
Yeah, flat across the road there, Brian. Really interesting the way this ultimately came back to reignite things. 5 in front now rather than 3. 30 seconds is the gap already.
This is a better breakaway. Nothing against the first 5 riders, and most of these riders have been sat in the peloton pretty much all day, so some fresher legs now.
As you say, 86 k's to go, and the speed they're riding at here, and we've probably got bang on around 2 hours of racing, if we assume 43, 44 k's an hour of racing, of average speed, should I say. So 2 from St Piran, 2 from the TDT Unibet cycling team, and 1 from Cairn Farmer. So 5 riders now clear with 86.6 k's to go. Stage 6 of the Tour of Britain. It's been an interesting one today. Kamil Melecki, Jerome Blowen and Abram Stockman formed the early break of the day. It's Jack Root Kingrey, William Tidball, Danny van der Took, Abram Stockman. And also there, Harris de Vries. So that is the situation at the head of the race now, 49 seconds. And this has got a really good look to this one, hasn't it, Brian? Especially both teams, 2 riders from 2 teams. There's going to be it gives you a different sort of coordination. They're going to really have a plan here, aren't they? And this could be a really interesting little breakaway now. But I don't think it'll be too long before we see Jumbo-Visma riding. They won't maybe it might go up to 2 minutes, but with 5 riders flat, I think they'll get it maybe a minute and a half maximum.
Yeah, they'll be straight on it.
Too strong.
When the attacks were starting there, I could see that Stephen Kreuzwick had drifted to the back. Those accelerations, he can ride all day, as you know, a bit of a diesel in this race especially. But yeah, 5 riders. It was stage 1 when we had 5 riders, remember, and then we had 4 riders, 3 riders, 3. So with 85 kilometres to go, like you say, closer to the finish, fresher legs, 5, they have to be on it pretty much straight away. Some one-legged riding there from Tidball, just easing his leg a little bit. But yeah, they seem to be getting themselves together, and they all have to commit. I think Tidball just suffering maybe a little bit from his initial acceleration, but yeah, Jumbo-Visma want to leave this too much straight onto the front, control things, and this will be kept in a very short leash, this one.
Yeah, William Tidball had a nice chat with him actually in Glasgow, following him becoming the World Scratch Race champion, an exceptionally gifted young rider. Took the first gold medal, I think it was. It was one of the first events in the track, wasn't it? It took our Great Britain's first gold medal of the World Championships. Real talent, he really, really is. And also very good on the road as well, if you look back through his palmares. A very pleasant young man, and a wonderful ambassador for the St Piran team. We've got such a versatile team. And also a wonderful attacking spirit as well. And that's what we're seeing every single day. Another very successful year for the Cornish-based team. Steve Lampier, the DS, in the back of the car, possibly in part responsible for that first little move of Alexander Richardson, just saying to try something. There's some days you can't do it every single day, and you can't ride in a reckless manner, but you've got to look at ways of trying to open up the race, using your head, and using these riders. A lot of riders in this field, Brian, I think it's fair to say. It's a difficult one because Jumbo-Visma are doing what Jumbo-Visma do. They're doing what any team would do, given the fact they've got the race lead, and that's trying to control the race. But it can be quite frustrating when you're in the bunch, and you almost feel a little bit held back. But sometimes you just got to be patient and try and find the right time, haven't you, to try and go clear. And especially if you've got good legs and you've got a team with burgeoning potential, riders who want to express themselves, because this for St Piran will be the biggest race of the year, and possibly for the Unibet cycling team have got a very good race programme too, but the Arionia Conti team, so this race will be one of the biggest they do as well, and that's why they're getting on the front foot. They don't want to race anonymously, and we're seeing the whole of the Jumbo-Visma team on the front though, and the ever-reliable, ever-powerful Jos van Emden going to the front when the gap was around 50 seconds. So yeah, they're going to keep a lid on this one. I don't think they'll allow it to actually get much more than a minute here, Brian. Otherwise, it's 5 riders of that class. Root Gray in there too, remember, just off the medals in the World Under-23 Road Race Championships, and thrown to the mix the other riders in there too. This is a pretty classy move, and as you say, 4 of these riders are fresh out of the bunch as well, so they'll be invigorated, good energy levels too, and so this is forcing Jumbo-Visma into probably a little bit of a harder chase, or a far harder chase or holding pattern than we would have seen before.
Yeah, they'll take this, Mark, because when Bora and Flanders and other teams were going on, and they kind of lost control of it a little bit. If that had continued, that would have been a little bit harder to control. So you have to take sometimes the hand you're given, and they'll take that. 5 was the maximum they've possibly said. So they're going to keep it in a really, really short leash. I really do think that these guys have to play the game as well. I don't think they have to go flat out. They're only going to be given maximum a minute and a half. I think in this case, a bit similar to stage 1, don't ride flat out, just save that little bit, save that 10%, right? There's 5 of you, just save that 10%, you're a little bit fresher, there's no point fighting the peloton, and then when you get to 30 kilometres to go, 40 kilometres to go, then you go, boom, use that 10%, because I really do think that there's enough strength here, and seeing the way that Jumbo-Visma have ridden so far, they'll put them under pressure, put them under real pressure. They might have to use Van Hooydonk and Affini a little bit earlier, and for anybody with a sprinter in their team, that's going to suit them a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely. And this sort of tactic, it's a play for the stage win, make no bones about it. This has a different feel than the earlier break of the day. Although Jumbo-Visma are putting a lid on it early doors, it's gone out to 1 minute and 15 seconds. But definitely, this is going to be a far harder effort for Kruijswijk and at Jos van Emden at the moment. And right now, no other team's getting involved. Alexander Richardson having a conversation there with Luke Rowe. Luke Rowe smiling. I wonder what the conversation. Let's have a little listen here. He's asking what on earth he's doing, I think. They can do what they want, can't they? Is Alexander Richardson moving up to attack, or has he just been is having a conversation with Wout van Aert there? It's all taken in good jest, but I think Van Aert is just asking what they're doing. I think it's all been doing quite friendly. But
yeah, it looks friendly.
Yeah, but I think there was a genuine question, well, what are you guys doing? But I'd imagine the answer would be, we're here to race just as much as you guys. They're full of, I think it's a mark of respect for actually Jumbo-Visma having that conversation with Citroën, but they're making it hard for them. They're making, the other smaller teams in this race are making Jumbo-Visma work very hard now, and I applaud it. I think it's great. But there doesn't seem to be any problem there at all. Everybody was smiling, but yeah, Wout van Aert, almost like the patron of this peloton, I think it's fair to say, but certainly not in a bad way, but having a little bit of a conversation there with Alexander Richardson, who himself, of course, has ridden at an exceptionally high level, rode for Alpecin de Koning for a couple of seasons. But anyway, the whole of Jumbo-Visma now forced to the front. 1 minute 20 is the lead now. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit harder now for Kruijswijk and for Jos van Emden, but Van Emden has been on the front now for the best part of 3 or 4 Ks. So 5 riders out in front now, bang on 80 kilometres to go now as we head towards Harlow. Less the sea behind us. It's a muggy day here in Essex. Exceptionally warm, 30 degrees as, look at that for a sight. Peloton motoring and the lead going out now, 1 minute 23 seconds. When you see the breakaway riding, Brian, you don't get quite the same impression of speed as when you flip back to the peloton. and seeing what this speed does to the shape of the bunch. This is a real illustration of the fact that brake are moving ever so slightly quicker than the brake. They've gone from 115 to 120. This is going to be hurting Van Emden. This is going to be 350 watts, 400 watt efforts on the front at the moment that it's going to have to try and sustain. I don't think there's no panic stations at all. It's just they're now having to work a little bit harder than I think they would have liked.
Of course they are. And if I had a rider in a breakaway, if you ask them to ride, full gas, then, you're helping all the other sprinters in this main group, purely because Jumbo-Visma might be, under the cosh a little bit and have to use more of their riders. They will lose more of their riders. There's less riders to help come the finish. But if you wanted to try and win the stage with one of these riders here, and I'm talking about possibly Unibet and St. Piran, I wouldn't be giving 100%. You're only getting a tight leash, so I'd be more inclined into trying to save a little bit, because I think if you got yourself in the breakaway, you stand a good chance of possibly all going to the finish. We saw what happened in stage one. They went very, very close, 5 riders. So I think you hold that a little bit back, because what this is doing is it's tiring out the riders in the break. It's also tiring out the riders at the front of the peloton. And Jumbo-Visma, if they want to, they can easily bring this back. You put Van Hooijdonk and Affini in there, you want to bring it back, but they're still going to use 2 riders just to hold it. And those 2 riders, Steven Kruijswijk, Jus van Emden, have done it for the last 4 days. They were under a little bit more pressure in stage 1. You remember the interviews of Olaf Koy there. They were really pushed to do that. So I think throttle back a little bit. Just take a minute and 10, a minute and 15 is the gap you're going to get, and then get to 30, 40 k's to go and just go bang, use that 10% and try and kind of hold them off, because I think that Jumbo-Visma will have to use more of the riders.
Yeah, quite right.
We saw that Bora Hansgrohe were getting involved, remember, with about 50 kilometres to go in the first stage. So I really do think this is a fighting force, but what you don't want to do is try and push this above 130, because these guys will ride faster as well.
Yep.
So if you want a chance in the breakaway, just throttle it back a little bit, because if you ride 100% and go full gas, the only teams that you're helping are the other teams with the sprinters, because they really want you to go 100% in front, because they want Jumbo-Visma to use more of their firepower, so there's less firepower at the end.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it, to see a little bit further back down the line with the green jersey of Olaf Koy. Just dropped off to sitting in the wheels of Ineos Grenadiers riders. But you're quite right, it's a balancing act here, isn't it? Because you're going to have to, I agree, I think the next hour, or the next 45 minutes, they ride a tempo that's obviously hard but sustainable, but keeping a little bit back, and keeping 5 or 10% back for that final 45-minute squeeze. And that will really put Jumbo-Visma on the ropes. We know that they're more than capable of bringing this back.
But not just with the 2 riders.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
No. They're going to, like you said, they will have to use Nathan Van Hooijdonk, and they clearly realise that. So Van Hooijdonk at the moment is just sat behind. Should Jos van Emden just start to tire a little bit, and that's certainly going to be the case. I mean, Steven Kruijswijk and Van Emden have done a lot of riding already. We're on stage 6. We've spent a lot of time in the wind, and they're more than capable of carrying an enormous workload. But there's fresh legs out in front, and at the moment it's 5 versus 1, because we've only had Van Emden on the front just to hold it. And clearly there's a little bit of a plan, maybe to use Van Emden for one particular long phase and then start rotating Kruijswijk and Nathan Van Hooijdonk. We'll soon see as we look at Jack Rutkin-Gray, close up there of the man from St. Piran. Such a
See that
season.
caption coming up there, 50th place at 3 seconds.
There you go, that's it, yeah. Well, 3 of our breakaway are just at 3 seconds. So Danny van der Tweek of Keep Kern Farmer, he's at 5 minutes and 12. He's the least best placed rider in the move. Abram Stockman is at 22 seconds for Unibet. And then the rest of the break, Jack Rutkin-Gray, Will Tidball are both at 3. And Harris de Vries also at 3 seconds as well. And there is de Vries. So 3 riders pose a threat. 125, the gap's gone out, another 5 seconds. But keep an eye on this time gap. And the Jumbo-Visma will be acutely tuned into this as well. They will not want to let this go much higher than this, that's for sure. But I think, yeah, that's be what I'd be saying in this, is just keep this going, but just hold something back. Still a long way to go in this bike race, 75 k's to go. But Jumbo-Visma in particular are going to have to keep a close eye on this. And I don't think they'll get any help today, Brian, either. Or do you think maybe near the end, when there's a sniff of victory in sight, we might see the likes of Bora getting involved a bit, but not for a long time. I think at the moment Jumbo-Visma will be put under pressure, but other teams also won't want this to go to the line. So Great GB won't want this to go to the line. Bora Hansgrohe won't want it to go to the line. Ineos probably won't want this to go to the line as well, but they're going to have to time any assistance with the chase very, very delicately, aren't they? Don't do too much too early, but at the same time they might want to get involved right near the back end. But I think Jumbo-Visma have got this under control at the moment, but it's an interesting one when and if any other teams will get involved, and I don't think it'll be for a long time yet.
I don't think any teams. The only team I can think of is Movistar. They put one rider up there yesterday, so why are they not putting a rider up there today? I don't think Ineos just thinking of keeping the pressure on Jumbo-Visma. That's all they're interested in. For them to help bring this back, they don't have a sprinter to finish it off, so there's actually no point. So unless you've got a sprinter back here, that's the only way you're going to help. Bora have been trying to get themselves in the breakaway. They've been active enough. They want to play a kind of different game. So I think most of the teams just would like to see these guys just go full gas and put Jumbo-Visma really under pressure. And they are doing it for the moment, because it's still the two riders of Steven Kruijswijk and Joos van Emden. They haven't used the third rider yet. If this continues to go up, they will use the third rider, but I'll say it again, I would just say save 10%, just save that, because I think they have got a chance. And what the other teams would be hoping for is Jumbo-Visma start using Nathan van Hooydonk and Affini. That's what they're hoping. And if that's the case, if they start using other riders, then they'll have less riders to kind of move Wout van Aert and Olive Koy up come the end. And that's what you want to try. You want to kind of force that.
It's a Julian Wynne, another one of the DSs for the St. Piran team. So car 1, looks like it's Julian Wynne today. Car 2, I'd imagine it's going to be Steve Lampier. So Julian Wynne, a rider we both know very well. I know you worked with him in the past as well as raced against him. But he's giving a little bit of advice here to both of the St. Piran riders in this move. Tidball and the Jack Rootkin-Gray, two very talented bike riders. And two riders more than capable really of moving up to the next level in world cycling, Brian. And it's these sorts of rides. Again, I don't think Rootkin-Gray and Tidball need to be in the shop window much more, but it's just great to see them expressing themselves and putting one of the biggest teams in the world. I'm not saying Jumbo-Visma on the back foot, but they're just squeezing a little bit, just applying a little bit of pressure. So you have to doff your cap to both TDT Unibet cycling team, who've been one of the most aggressive teams in this entire race, as well as having a great social media team as well, and St. Piran too, for really mixing it up. It's been fascinating to see. Whatever the result, I'm really liking the attitude of the way they're setting about this bike race. Because look at the shape of the bunch. Look at what this break is now doing. Completely different to what would have happened before with the 3 men out in front. Not taking anything away from that breakaway, but far more easier to manage. But we saw that hard reset, and now a far more dangerous and potent group have gone clear, forcing Jumbo-Visma now to use far more resource than they'd like to. And we'll see how this one unfolds, because at the moment it's just Van Emden, isn't it? He's the man tasked with just holding them, and probably more than capable of doing it. But how long can one man hold on to 5 riders is interesting. So it's not rotating at all with Kruijswijk from what we've seen here, Bron. Why do you think that is? What do you think he's been told here? What do you think Jumbo-Visma are doing now in terms of how they distribute their resources?
Well, they were swapping turns before, weren't they? But this is a bit more of a kind of serious breakaway. So this will be a case of Joos van Emden. We know what he's capable of. I know he's been riding at the front so far quite steadily, if I have to say, because the three riders weren't really kind of pushing on. But now they are. This is a time trial effort. He's used to doing that. That's his speciality. So I think the tactic has changed from swapping on the front to Joos van Emden. See, for the next, say, 30 kilometres, your job is to hold this under a minute and a half. So he's got a 30-kilometre time trial effort in him now. So I think that's the case. It's about saving the energy of the other riders. That's all it is. And then you get Olaf Koy deciding that, I'm just going to stop for a natural break.
Blimey, while they're doing in excess of probably around 50 k's an hour. One thing I would not be doing, Brian, at this moment, is pulling over for a call of nature. But again, I'm not Olaf Koy. It's funny looking back through the years and where I've seen some riders swing off for a call of nature. And I remember there's a big race that I did, and a couple of riders, I think it might have been some riders from Rally back in the day, Brian, like they got eliminated because they pulled over, and it went I can't remember what race it was, but they pulled over for a break very early in the race, and then we hit some crosswinds and we never saw them again. They both got eliminated. Yeah, it was a little bit laissez-faire, shall we say, but there's nothing laissez-faire about this breakaway. This has really lit this stage up. It really has. It's made for a far more intriguing proposition, and it won't be too long before we hit the climb of Ship Road. Well, I say that, 25 k's in fact, but Ship Road, these riders will hardly notice. It's just a long drag in terms of elevation gain. Not very steep at all, but we are shifting now. Not much wind today, but what wind there is now just coming from the side but on their nose, so a slight head crosswind as we pass through another beautiful little parish in the county of Essex, and another school with the kids out to greet the race as it passes by. Never ceases to bring a smile to my face seeing the kids at the side of the road. And there you go, there's the flag there, just showing you the wind direction, just ever so slightly in their face. But as it's so light today, it won't be having too much of a nullifying effect on the average speed. It's pretty quick as we get a close-up there. Jack Rukindre and Tidball just sat at the back there. All of them at the moment looking good. It's a proper team time trial formation here, isn't it, Brian? Looks like they're doing 20-30 seconds on the front each. And with 5, you actually do get a reasonable rest, don't you, as well? So there's not 2 lines. It is they've got themselves properly dialed here, haven't they? They're working well. They're keeping that pace high. And they're doing 20 or 30 seconds on the front, which means you get about a 2-minute rest in between each effort, which is actually quite nice, isn't it?
It is to get a long enough rest, and Joos van Emden's getting a bit of a rest now, but I think the onus is in him to do a little bit more than Steven Kruijswijk. Again, just taking the feed from the front of the race, which saves a lot of energy. Looks as if Olaf Koy will just do his own thing, but you can see that Wout van Aert, normally, the kind of race leader of Wout van Aert won't take his own, he'll get someone else to do it, but yeah, he has to take it when he's got 2 riders on the front doing the work, and Olaf Koy has stopped for a natural, he'll be making his way back. They are under pressure. They've delivered for the last 5 days. Can they deliver today? I really do think they can, but I think they will start to use, especially in the last kind of maybe 30, maybe 20 kilometres, they'll have to use another rider, because I think by that stage, Steven Kruijswijk and Joos van Emden might be a little bit tired by then.
Yep. Like you say, they've still got a lot of firepower up their sleeve as well. They really, really have. And there we go, a nice bit of teamwork there, cooling everybody down. It's not very often that you see that. It's Harris de Vries distributing some cold water. You just see the salt stains just towards the lower part of his shorts there. Very warm day. Doesn't look it because of the how occluded we have the weather is today, but I tell you what, it is very, very warm outside. It's warm up here in Derbyshire where I'm commentating from. Is it warm where? Oh, it's warm where you are, Brian, not far away from where the race is, really, are you? Not a million miles, but a hot, hot day here in Essex. And it was the man just rolling up to the front a few moments ago, Wout van Aert, rummaging through his musette, making sure that both Steven Kruijswijk and Jos van Emden are suitably fueled. And there we go. Performing a massively important job here. That was actually a little bit of ice. Can
you remember putting ice down your top when you were racing in Britain?
No. Well, because we didn't have cool box. I don't know. It was just pretty basic. We basically had just room temperature water. When I was a pro, yeah. I mean, but I don't think we ever had ice. I had ice. We had ice in Malaysia when I was racing. Yeah, we needed it there. I don't think we had it in the Giro. But no, I wouldn't say it's a relatively new thing, but it's teams are just more aware. Teams have just got more stuff these days, haven't they? The whole infrastructure, even the top level teams 20 years ago, it was a far simpler sport in that regard. There wasn't as much stuff, there wasn't as much kit, there wasn't as much support. But now there's no stone unturned in relation to just making sure the riders, as best they can, are optimised in terms of keeping their core body temperature as low as possible, making sure they're fueled, making sure they're as efficient as possible on the bike. But it was a lot looser back in the day. We're just seeing a free shower being administered there by Harris de Vries. And I think that was pretty welcome from Danny van der Tuik as well. So a couple of Dutchmen in the breakaway, and it's a couple of Dutchmen chasing behind now. 1 minute and 14 seconds. So it's come down a little bit. The gap to our 5 leaders and the chasing bunch behind between a minute and a quarter and a minute and a half. But Jos van Emden briefly solo on the front as our breakaway continues to relay.
Kruijswijk done a turn there and kind of moved back into the group. He's sitting in about 10th place now, so I really do think it's taken its toll a little bit. I'm seriously thinking that this is a good move for the breakaway, but as long as they are saving a little bit, they're helping each other, because if I was in the team car, I'd be telling, well, it's only Jos van Emden is at the front, he's doing the majority, the others are kind of sitting back. If they bring up Van Hooijdonk and Kruijswijk again and Affini, they can bring it back, but yeah, that's what they don't want to do. They want to save those to make it easier for the kind of lead out in the finish, because they want to win that 6th stage. So yeah, for the other teams, this is a good situation. But what I would like to see is a successful breakaway, especially the teams that are in there, because pretty much there's a couple of teams in there that have been teams of the race, Unibet and St Piran. I'd love to see this go to the end, but the only way it's going to go to the end is if they hold a little bit back. If they hold something back, then they can at least drive it into the last kind of 30-40 kilometres and stand a chance. Maybe more of a chance than the first stage, because we had Bora with Ida Schellen and Niels Pollitt come up and help out, and they only helped out for a certain period of time. Yep.
As you say, when I was talking before about what teams would come up, I'm not expecting any teams to come up at all, but let's say that they've got a minute, 10Ks to go. What the Bora and the other and Movistar do then? Do they think, well, how much pressure do they want to apply? They don't apply so much pressure on Jumbo-Visma that they throw away the chances of a bunch kick themselves for their sprinters. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? I don't think Jumbo-Visma, I think this break I think they are going to get caught, actually. But I think Jumbo-Visma are going to hurt, but I just think they're more than capable of bringing it back themselves. But let's flip that round and just say this break maybe
take a step back, Matt. Right, you're in this breakaway and you win, irrelevant of the other teams. So if I was in this breakaway, I'd be saying to everybody else, look, save that little bit from say 30 kilometres ago. We hold it at this. We hold it round about a minute. It keeps Jumbo-Visma happy, and then all of a sudden, put the pressure on, get that 10% out there, irrelevant of what else is happening. Will the other teams help out? They might and might not. They might think they're going to be brought back. But again, if they've got a minute with 30 kilometres to go and two riders are riding, we saw what happened in stage one when Bora Hansgrohe came up with, a couple of riders. They came up, done a few turns, and then left again. It was hard. So that energy save for the last 30 kilometres can really do some damage. And they've got, that's their only chance of staying away. Their only chance, irrelevant of any other teams trying to get involved with the mix-up.
Yeah, as you say, the situation out in front. They've got 5 riders. They've got the road actually starts to, once we get to in a couple of k's time, the terrain changes ever so slightly. Most of the 1,000 meters of elevation are actually in the last phase of this race, in the last 50 or 60 k's. Although we're saying it's a totally flat stage, it's been pretty much flat so far. It actually gets a little bit more challenging on the approach to Harlow, a little bit more rolling. Harlow itself just sits on the Essex and Hertfordshire border, and Hertfordshire is quite rolling, a little bit slightly different, it's not completely flat. So the terrain does shift. They'll still be carrying a lot of speed. We're not talking about big climbs, but we are talking about some, it's harder terrain is what I'm saying, harder terrain to sort of chase on. As you can see, we're getting a few little rollers now as we head towards the climb. The climb comes, or the top of the climb comes at 46.1 k's to go. We hit the bottom at around 44 k's to go. But just to finish my point, Brian, I totally agree with you. These riders have almost got to ride now a bit of a negative split. Still ride quick, still put pressure on, but with holding something back. So there's almost like a button they press with like 40 k's to go. So right now, bang, and there's a sudden shift and we go all in. And we've seen that the way the breakaways have done it in the past. Rather than just slowly increasing it like a ramp test, it's just actually ride so you're holding something back and you can feel that you can give some more and then go all in and open up the gap suddenly. So there's a real differential between the pace they're riding at now and the pace that they're going to be riding at in the last 20 or 30 k's of this race. Saying that, the gap has come down a little bit, and that might be because of what they're doing now. Maybe they are just pacing it. Maybe that was one of the conversations that Julian Wynne had. It's just like, okay, keep it rolling and just hold a little bit back so we can react and we can give it something else. And we've seen it before when a breakaway has just eased ever so slightly, almost to give the bunch a false sense of security that they're closing it, and then go again, and it opens quite up, and that's actually quite disconcerting, isn't it, for the bunch? Or for the chase, sorry, should I say, not the bunch, the chase.
It is. This might be the kind of last opportunity now to give anything up, any advice and bottles and that, because it looks as if the gap coming down under a minute, the team cars might be forced to go back to the peloton, and that will suit them as well. That can often be a tactic as well with the teams. Keep it under a minute. That means that they're not getting fed and watered. So this might be one of the last opportunities. So, certainly if I was Jumbo-Visma, I'd keep it under a minute to keep that car. I know they can use neutral service, but there's nothing like your own car.
It's not the same, is it?
Yeah, it's nothing like your own car. So just keep it under a minute and keep the team cars out the way, because I think they'll be seriously worried about these 5 riders. If they are saving something back, then we're in for a very entertaining final.
Yeah, we certainly are. Certainly a painful one as well. Kruijswijk, though, looks pretty composed at the moment. I don't think there's any panic stations at all. It's just they need to be very focused, and they haven't taken their eye off the ball once in this race so far. But you're quite right. This has been the most dangerous looking breakaway, I think, of the whole race so far. It's the break that possibly has the most potential, I think it's fair to say. Looking at some of the stats there, Ethan Vernon's stats, maximum 990 watts, Abram Stockman just over 1,000 watts. That would have been an acceleration to break clear, and averaging 310. Just look at that. Ethan Vernon in the bunch, 200 watts average, and the average for Stockman, who's been in the breakaway all day. He was in the first break and this break as well. Well done to the Swannier there for delivering both musettes successfully. But just look at that, over a third more energy. Ooh, what happened there? Did something fall into his gears? It was strange. Maybe I jumped unnecessarily there, but look at the difference of workload there, Brian. 310 average watts for Stockman, and that's a hard day out, and then 200 for Ethan Vernon. Just showing you the differential there.
Well, if he doesn't get the most popular in brackets combativity award, then there's something wrong, because he's in both breakaways today and he really deserves it.
No, he certainly does. And if he does get it, it'll be the second time that he's won it, because he's already taken that award. It was three days ago. So 54 seconds now. And there's that moment again. Wonderfully deft delivery by the TDT Unibet cycling team Swan Year there. And that was one, yes indeed, it was he run over his own bottle. That's what it was. It made me jump. Thankfully he managed to still keep himself upright. And as we move into some slightly smaller lanes here. NEG just moving past. 48 seconds. So yeah, the team car will have definitely been stripped out now. And neutral service dropped in behind. So the team cars can come in when the gap's a minute. But under a minute they strip out the team cars. Otherwise it acts as a bit more of a carrot, doesn't it? Especially if you get 2 or 3 team cars in the convoy. I mean, on an uphill drag on a stretch of road like that, it narrows the gap considerably, doesn't it? So it's almost like creating a vacuum, isn't it? And keeping it a sterile area between the breakaway and the bunch when the gap's a little bit narrower, and also avoiding any possibilities of any drafting as well.
And it mentally, when you see the cars in front of you, it's, it just gives you that something to aim for as well when you're riding on the front, instead of going round a corner, big long road, and you can't see anything.
Yeah. That's like on the front now, the mass ranks of Mobistar. It's time for them to enjoy a little bit of a late lunch. 2 minutes past 2. And, we should be heading home in about 1 hour and 20 minutes, I reckon, given the terrain that we've got.
I wonder if Cav is in the country. Don't know where he's living, because we're not too far from his neck of the woods as well. Yeah. Might see him at the side of the roads.
Yeah, Alex Dowsett territory as well. Yeah, I'm not too sure how near it goes to where he is, but yeah, it won't be too far away. Well, Essex is a big county though. We're heading right our way across Essex and heading towards the border with Hertfordshire. That's where Harlow sits. Actually straddles both counties. Just under 60 k's to go now. And the gap as it is at the moment, I think Jumbo-Visma will be a little bit happier that they've got it to under a minute. Even factoring in the breakaway, giving it the beans and going a little bit harder a bit later. But this terrain is, again, out of sight, out of mind around here as well. Twisting, turning, narrow. Beautiful roads to train on. Quite a lot of shelter from the wind, as you can see, because of the hedges, the trees either side of the road. As one of our official vehicles looks as if it wants to pass by. And no real opportunity here on these particularly narrow bits of road.
Commissar 4 behind the breakaway.
A bit of on-bike yoga, a bit of a stretch there. For Steven Kruijswijk, stretching out his quads. And on the front, Jos van Emden here. They look like, as I said, it's gone out to about a minute now, but they look like they've got this under control. But again, they do make it look so easy, don't they? There was the bit on that slightly more main road there when it went up to a minute and a half that they really had to squeeze. But I'm wondering if the brake are really mindful of what you've been talking about. Just said, okay, let's keep it going. Let's keep the pressure on.
I think they have to be, Mark.
Yeah,
if the sports directors are on it, they have to be. They have to play the game. Don't worry about it coming down to 50 seconds or that. The key for the success, or trying to have any success, is by saving that little bit. But then again, Jumbo-Visma can just, ride it down if they want. Because I think they've brought it down to under a minute. Jumbo-Visma they'll back off a little bit, thinking, well, that was hard. Now we've brought it down, we just want to kind of stay here. We saw Steven Kruijswijk just stretch his legs a bit. It's hurting them. But they don't want to use any other. They want the 4 riders kept for the finish. So they're going to sit, and they're happy. So they're happy just keeping it at this. And I do hope that, the 5 riders in the breakaway are saving something, because when they just go bang and, really give that extra 10%, the riders from Jumbo-Visma will see the gap going up to minute 10, minute 15, minute 20, and it's like, we're having to ride. No, it's not coming down 5 against 2. Then they have to use other riders and things like that. So I would leave it a little bit longer. If they're still like this with 25 k's to go, that would be the time where I would say just squeeze it now.
Yeah,
Because it gives them only 25 kilometres to react.
exactly. And moving pretty quickly, heading towards the only categorised climb of the day. Just 6.9 k's to go. It comes at 46.1 as we pass yet another school. As we wend our way west. Started down on the coast earlier on today, of course, in Southend-on-Sea. Went up to Burnham-on-Crouch. We're heading, we're just south of Chelmsford now. About 4 or 5 miles south of Chelmsford. Heading due west. Getting quite near to the outskirts of London, not too far from the M25 actually. We actually cross over the M11 as we head into Harlow. So just to the far east of London, of course, the man in the breakaway might actually know this area quite well. Jack Rootkin-Gray hails from London. Tidball at the back, spraying a lot of water there. He's got that ice pack just in between his shoulder blades there as well. That will slowly be melting, just giving him that nice cool feeling. And that body temperature down. Very hard to regulate the body when it's you've got temperatures like this, and when the air is this thick, like it is at the moment. It's quite a sticky day across the country. 30 degrees, even though you don't get, even the wind doesn't really cool you down. Quite often when you're riding, when it's 20-25 degrees, you do get a cooling effect, but when you've got 30 degrees plus, Brian, the air doesn't really cool you down much at all. It's more like a hairdryer, isn't it?
Yeah, when it's less a lot, especially when you're in Spain. If you're inland, you go down to the coast and get a little bit of a breeze. Because it's not that kind of breeze, it's stifling a little bit. And sometimes that, it's the warm air you're going through as well. So yeah, it's not often we get temperatures like this in the UK, especially at this time of year. So I'll take it all day long rather than have cold and rain.
Yeah, in total agreement with you there. I wasn't a rider that particularly liked the rain, that's for sure. This break working exceptionally well together. 51 seconds and holding steady. Just a reminder what has happened on today's stage. It's been a stage so far of 2 halves as we head in to the final third. If that's not the wrong way to talk about maths. But first part of the race split into 2. Malecki, Bloem and Stockman were the riders that went clear. Lead got up to around 2 minutes. It was brought back, came back down to just under a minute. And then it was this Imperial squad in the form of Alexander Richardson who has set things aflame again. A big attack from Richardson. He didn't go clear, but that provided a catalyst for some really aggressive racing. The momentum of the race then brought everything back together, and there was what we call a hard reset, and ultimately emerging was a fresh breakaway containing one previous rider from the initial move. So clearly a man with good legs today, Abram Stockman. But with him for company now, he's got Danny van der Tuuk of the Keep Kern Farmer. He's got Harris de Vries, a teammate of his from the TDT Unibet team, and also there in the breakaway out in front. That lead now has come down a little bit to 41 seconds. Jack Rootkin-Gray and William Tidball of St Piran. There is the posed race leader, but he won't mind. 4 stages to the good, well ensconced in the green jersey with 100 points tallied just in front of him. Wout van Aert looking very good in the leader's jersey, the fetching jersey, hailing back to the 1980s, the 1970s. About earlier than that, it was the GB kit, the Great Britain national kit. Well, for years and years and years, all the way back to like the 1940s, I think. It's the original kit, isn't it? It's just with the blue body and the red sleeves. It's a lovely, lovely kit. Kids at the top. I seem to recognise this road. I'm sure there was a race, Brian, you would have ridden it back in the day, called Romford Harlow.
Never ridden it at all. I know the race, never ridden it.
Yeah, and it goes, I just recognise it. I mean, I'm talking again 20 years ago when I last rode Romford Harlow. But it definitely goes down that bit of road. I remember that village green. Again, it's a race that's still around, actually. Romford Harlow still exists. I think it's one of the few races or local. It was never a top level race, but always a solid semi-classic, really, for want of a better phrase, in the UK. And very early in the season, generally early March. It was quite often the first race that I rode. But 41 seconds it is to our leaders. So yes, this is, I think, on the route of the Romford Harlow race. Of course, we are heading towards Harlow after all. A couple of stretches there.
They're getting ready.
Yeah, they are. I think they know what's certainly know what's to come. Stephen Kreuzweig takes that corner, nice and smooth. Nice photo opportunity for the spectator just at the side of the road there to get some good snaps, some close-ups of some of the finest riders in the world. Luke Rowe having a conversation with one of his teammates there, jersey fully unzipped. Again, another indication of how warm it is. Ben Turner as well, just playing around with his jersey too. And again, the relay on the front. 30-second turns, swing back to last man. And then a little increase in power, and once you're on the back wheel, you can relax a little bit. But they brought the team car up again. I wonder if that's been called through, because 45 seconds isn't enough, but it is fluctuating, isn't it, between a minute and 45 seconds at the moment. And there you go, Kern Farmer being helped out by St Purin there. It's always good to see, and quite common as well, isn't it, when you the teams quite often, when there's not that many cars, they will actually be in agreement. They'll often sell fire a WhatsApp message, or it's just the right thing to do, isn't it, just to service other riders in the move. I mean, St Purin, if they're to pull this off, they need it right now, the assistance of everybody in the break. So it'll only be detrimental not helping out another rider in break right now.
Yeah, they're riding as a team, all 5 riders in the front. You know, it's them against the peloton, and I don't think they pulled the team cars out, which is, I think it's a nice thing, because some commissaires are so strict. Some of them get out at 30 seconds when it's clear sometimes that it's not coming down, well enough. I've done neutral service before in races, done it in the Tour of Britain once as well. So I knew when the breakaway was going away, and I would stop, and one of the commissaires told me off for stopping. We jumped in behind the breakaway when it was just over a minute, and they jumped in 2.5, 3 minutes. So yeah, if you've got an understanding of racing, you can understand what's happening, and some of the commissaires have, some of them don't. And having a team care there, I think, is important, because the gap, normally a team car is not allowed in that smaller time gap with a minute. But I think the fact that they're able to service the whole their riders plus the other riders, I think that's the important thing. And so whoever commissaire car 4 is, I think you've done a good job today. You've got a real understanding of the race, and trying to make it as kind of fair as possible, and allow the breakaway to receive bottles and food and whatnot. It's really important on a hot day like this.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brian, not so much from a service point of view, but yeah, with the gap, if it does drop to 30 seconds, then it will be stripped out. But I think, yeah, definitely the right call has been made from a racing perspective. And even, it's actually important, it's massively important that the riders here get enough beat-ons. And you don't know, I mean, some of the cars actually might actually be running low as well. There's a lot of water being used, a lot of fluids being used. They'll have really stocked up to make sure that doesn't happen. But runners will be going through 2 or 3 bottles an hour, easy. Maybe at the moment, a bottle every 25 minutes, something like that. One would imagine, because they're going to be sweating profusely today.
Yeah, especially if they're spraying it. It's still. Yeah. We're not talking about just drinking it. We really are talking about. That looks like a glove that has been put in there. But yeah, it's. We are really talking about not just drinking the liquid. It's like spraying it over. You can spray almost a whole bottle over you.
Exactly, or somebody else in the breakaways we've seen. But yeah, that was quite an ingenious method. The most common method for containing the ice cubes, which the riders tuck inside the back of the neck, is a pair of tights. They're basically cut up, and you get one pair of tights, put ice in, cut it, tighten a knot, and then tighten. It's like a sausage, isn't it? Basically, of ice, and it's such an easy way and a handy way to actually get the ice in, and then the ice will just slowly melt over a period of time. and setting it between the shoulder blades means it doesn't slip back down. And the jerseys that the rider's wearing these days as well are very, very closely fitted, as you can see, and just keeps it snugly in place. But I think on that occasion it did look as if the St Piran team had used gloves, the plastic gloves type used at a petrol station perhaps, to stick the ice in and just whack it between the shoulders. And they're going to be going through quite a lot. And it suggests to me that it might actually be running out. So they're using other things to put the ice in, to be honest with you. They've gone through so much of it today. And during our little bit of a chat on ice, with just under 50 k's to go. The lead now, 1 minute and 3 seconds. So it's gone up, but again, it's fluctuating between 45 seconds and a minute. And this is the terrain that I'm talking about. You just see the land's shifting and changing now. This is the terrain's a bit harder, as you can see. It's not the flat fenlands that we had before out towards the coast near Southend-on-Sea for the first 60 or 70 k's of this race. As we're heading into the final and we're heading in towards the edge of Greater London, or just to the northwest or the northeast of Greater London, should I say, the terrain does actually shift and change. It's certainly not super hilly. Yeah, there's a puncture there. There's a flat back tyre. And that's a shame that Abram Stockman is definitely running on a soft one there, Brian, isn't he? By the looks of things, yeah. It's almost on the rim there.
Not good, is it? Not good for the
shame.
breakaway. Unfortunately, it's. I don't know if his team car is there yet, but sometimes, in a lot of the top races, he won't want to take it from. He won't want to take it, will he? You have to do it in the right.
You stop on the right. That's it. Oh, they're stopping on the left. A little bit of confusion there. There we go. So this is going to mean it's going to. Yep. I'm not too sure. I think they are using Shimano, aren't they? The TDT Unibet team. Yeah, they are using Shimano. But again, wheel changes with the through axle. That's actually reasonably quick, to be fair.
Yeah.
That's actually not a bad change. That wasn't too bad, actually. That wasn't a bad change, but he's got a bit of a chase. Lost the best part of 30 seconds in total, I think. So he'll now be halfway between the bunch and the breakaway. And that's very unfortunate for the move out in front, Brian, isn't it? Especially 5 was a great number. 4 still good. He's a strong rider. But what they might do out in front, do you think it's worth them just easing a little bit and letting him get back on? Difficult.
No,
isn't it?
I think they're, I think they should be, saving that kind of 10%. They'll be hoping that. Well, I think they will be hoping that the car will actually kind of help them. We see this many times in the past, Matt, that somebody will puncture and then come back miraculously. And I hope the TV cameras stay away from this one, because I think he deserves to be back in the breakaway. And if neutral service can help him a little bit, I think they should. So if the TV cameras kind of stay away from him, because that's the only way that he can help. But no, TV cameras are stuck, and while this is the case, I don't think he's going to get any help, because normally just a little bit of help just behind the car a little bit. He's punctured, he was in the breakaway, and that's just an unfortunate thing. So normally the team car would be there and help him up a little bit, put him back to where he was before, but I think it's going to be very difficult now, especially with the TV cameras are on you.
Yep. I mean, it is illegal. It's against the rule to sit on the bonnet of a car, to sit behind the car, of course. But on the odd occasion, a blind eye is turned. But this is actually quite a critical situation in the race. So it's the sort of thing that does happen on the odd occasion. But if it's caught on camera, or if there's just an eagle-eyed commissaire, you risk being penalised. And it's a very difficult situation that we find Stockman in there, because the racing is on, and it's just a racing incident, isn't it? And it's going to be very hard for him to get back on. It doesn't look like they've eased off at all, as this terrain now starts to get. This is pretty grippy now. They've been on the flat for the vast majority of the day, and just these small little rises. As I said, the 1,000 metres of elevation spread over the day is not much, but the fact that all of it is in the final third of the race means this final section is actually quite punchy.
Yeah, you do feel it because you're on the flat using bigger gears, and then you go into kind of small drags like this, and you start to feel it in the legs a little bit. Even more so, Matt, when you go from a flat to kind of real climbs, not just kind of drags like this. Yeah. You really feel it, and you're forced to put into the little ring. Your legs sometimes feel like jelly, but you know, we're almost over the top of this climb. They're not waiting. They can't afford to wait. I'm just looking at Stockman here. Is neutral service going to help him a little bit? Just giving him a bottle. They're trying to help out. Just wish the cameras would stay off. Please, please. You know, I know it's against the rules, but you see it happening. It's about consistency. You see it happen in so many races that if you puncture anything like that in the breakaway, you get a little bit of help to get back to where you are. And the quicker you can do it, the better. But what they always say is, you know, that the cameras just, you know, stop any of that happening.
Well, it was Jack Arukin-Gray who took a maximum points over the top there, but they didn't contest that one. As you see, it was only just a long drag. I think there are several climbs on the run into the line that are a little bit harder than that, but that's the climb, that's the only climb we've got, and that was the climb of Ship Road. And now onto a slightly bigger road, as you can see, and the bunch behind are at 52 seconds, and we still have one man in between. We've just left, or just leaving the village now of West Hanningfield. We've got Hanningfield Reservoir nearby, and the 11th largest, Brian, reservoir in the whole of England. Holds 25,000 million litres. Blimey, I had to read that number twice. And there's the situation for Stockman. Oh, that's going to be hard, isn't it? I don't think he's going to get back on there. That's just, these sorts of roads are too hard. He's about 20 seconds, 30 seconds behind now. And I do think that he's going to get mopped up. He's
closer to the peloton now as well. It's difficult. It's
cruel.
I know neutral service is hanging back to try and kind of help him out because there's no real reason for them to do that. They have to go up and make sure there's neutral service at the front of the race. But by the looks of things, it's not. Oh no!
Oh no! Oh, this is awful.
Surely nobody's put anything in the roads.
I hope that's. I mean, we haven't had that many punches in the Tour of Britain this year. That's it. It's oh no, his gears. Something's happened to his gears, but he has got a puncher as well. So that's it. The chance of the breakaway, the small chance that they did have, has now been extinguished. Again, a pretty slow change there.
Did you see the neutral service go by there with Stockman behind?
So, yep. 50 seconds, he's just going to get back in the bunch. That's very unfortunate for the man from the Keep Kern farm, Danny van der Turk, 23 years of age. He goes on his way, but that wasn't the speediest of changes. It was slowed down a little bit further by the fact his chain came off as well. So very, very unfortunate for the breakaway.
Camera shot's not helping. No. Camera shot's not helping at all. But I think Stockman, it looks as if he's getting closer to the front of the race again, which is unfortunate for Van de Tuck. I just hope that nobody's put anything on the road there, because you know it has happened in the past. It's quite not often you get two kind of punctures in the breakaway like that.
Yeah, that was. I mean, we are in pretty small country lanes. I'm not too sure if there's been any hedge cutting. That can often be the reason. But yeah, to get two punches in close proximity on reasonably good lanes is quite unusual. It just can be bad luck. But yeah, let's hope that isn't the case, Brian. We are, of course, just speculating here. But we've got around 1 hour of racing before we finish in Harlow today. It started in Southend-on-Sea. Very calm.
We just saw Matt. I don't know if you saw it. Van den Tuck is just on the left-hand side of the road now. I think it looks as if he's been caught already.
There we go. So that leaves just 3 riders out in front. Big shame for the chances of the breakaway. And this takes the pressure off as well. Takes the pressure off Jumbo-Visma immensely.
I think Stockman's not that far away. Here he comes, joining the break. We get 4 now.
There we go. We look at the Pinarello King of the Mountains, looking great from Van der Tuck. He's now punctured and heading back Harris de Vries and Will Tidball. There's your points, but it doesn't affect the overall classification at all. Still be on the shoulders of James Fouché of Bolt Equities Black Spoke team. The New Zealander safely in the peloton, which is being dragged along at the moment by the ever familiar figure of Jos van Enden, the 38-year-old Dutchman, current national TT champion, riding his final season and riding as effectively as ever. And there we go. It looks like, yeah, he's back on board, which is good news for the breakaway. So we now have 2 riders, well, we did, 2 riders from Unibet and 2 riders from St. Piran. So a big shame for the man from the Keep Kern farmer. Van der Tuck back in the bunch. I would imagine they might have waited a little bit, especially after they lost Van der Tuuk as well. It's like we need to wait for one rider, so now they can start to press on a little bit. But just losing one rider still isn't going to be advantageous at all. But with 42 k's to go, just under an hour, if you look at the speed of the peloton behind, this is going to be hard now, and I can't see Jumbo-Visma relenting at all here. They have looked just so in control, haven't they? So 42.5 kilometres to go. Situation at the front of the race is as follows. Jack Rutkin-Gray and William Tidball are in the move there. Both the riders in black, sandwiched between the two riders from the TDT Unibet cycling team, Abraham Stockman and Harris de Vries. Best placed riders in this group, Rutkin-Gray, Tidball and de Vries, all at 3 seconds behind the race leader, Wout van Aert. But the gap is a slender one. Went up to as much as a minute and a half. They've had a very difficult last few kilometres. Lost one rider from the move, Danny Van der Tuuk with a puncture, and Stockman himself had a puncture and had to drop rack. And that's certainly broken the rhythm and the momentum of the breakaway. And it's been just a double pursuit. Just two riders have been chasing for the best part of the 50 k's now. It's just been Jos van Emden and Steven Kruijswijk who've done a remarkably, ruthlessly effective job, leaving the rest of their resources to keep the powder dry for the finale in Harlow. Will it all come back together? Well, time will tell. It certainly looks as if the bunch have got this one in control. And again, the other teams haven't had to do anything at all. The way the race is poised now, it means Jumbo-Visma pretty much going to have to ride this all the way in, save for the last 7 or 8 k's when we see that normal momentum, that normal moving around and that positioning play for the bunch.
Yeah, this... not another one.
Yep. It's another puncture. Looks like a flat back tyre.
Oh, it's falling apart, isn't it?
This is so unfortunate. With the gap at 31 seconds, that's Tidball out of the mix. This is incredible. Unless we're seeing, unless there was, I mean, but the fact they're so spread apart as well, Brian, this is very strange. Well, very, very unfortunate. Well, any slim hopes that the breakaway had of staying clear now have now gone up totally in smoke, as William Tidball of St Piran gets taken back by the bunch, the victim of the third puncture in 10 minutes. Don't think I've ever seen that, Brian. That's really, really... I think that's just awful. I mean, we don't know if many riders in the bunch have punctured, but by the looks of things, that hasn't been the case. That's just awful luck, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope there's nothing untoward, and nobody's going to throw anything on the road, and the riders have picked up these punctures, because I was really looking forward to the 5 riders really putting up a big fight all the way into Harlow, because I think they would have done, but down to 3, and I have to say, well done to Shimano for getting Stockman back, but there's nothing you can do with Van der Tuuk, nothing there for Tidball, purely because there was only 30 seconds between. They might have been able to help a little bit if it was up towards a minute. So just when we thought, the pressure was being put on Jumbo-Visma with these 3 punctures, it seems to be, well in control. 25 seconds, only 3 riders now in front.
Yep, big shame. I can't remember a race where I've seen so many punches in such rapid succession. It's a pretty narrow pinch point there. There is, looks like there is a
especially from the break only.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I can't remember. Of course, you see riders punching all the time, but 3 punches from the break in the space of 5 or 6 k's. I don't think I can remember it, and that's awful luck, because this, as you say, looked like they had a definite potential. But now, with the gap down to 21 seconds, and still with just under 40 k's to go, so still we've got around 50 or so minutes of racing. Jumbo-Visma, they won't want to shut this down just yet. They'll want to keep it at around 25 seconds, half a minute, because what they don't want to do, because this, given the terrain we've got here, Brian, it's quite hilly, it's grippy, it's fast, but it's grippy. You're going to know about it. That chain's going to be tight all the time. You're going to be pushing some reasonable power numbers just sitting in the group behind. But if it does all come back together now, there could be some attacks, and I think other teams will just try and set things alight again.
Definitely, and it might be a case of, I tell you what we'll do, we'll just bring it all back and then start attacking, especially in the last 39 kilometres, or just start attacking anyway. Just, the other teams, Flanders started to do no X. Why not? Why not just attack? It was almost before the group was brought back. So now that it's down to 16 seconds, only 3 riders in front, the pressure is being released from Jumbo-Visma, and that's what the other teams don't want. So I think we might see some more attacks from some of the teams now in the last 40 kilometres, because it does look as if this group is not going to be successful after a series of 3 punctures. So on these rollers, why not put a little bit more pressure on, restart again for the second time today.
Indeed, we could have round 3. It looks like they are easing up. It looks like they're certainly swung across the road there. We're just heading through Ingatstone now. An Essex village just located between Brentwood and Chelmsford. Near the former Essex Great Road, which is, many of you know, if you're a fan of roads, it's the old A12. The main arterial route between Colchester and London. Since Roman times, it's a very famous road, big straight road. And the main feature here is Ingatstone Hall, which was built in the 16th century by Sir William Petre. The hall, if you're planning on visiting, retains its Tudor appearance, but was restored between 1915 and 1937. So a little bit of history for you there. As we pass through Ingatstone, 15 seconds, 13 seconds. The fire's gone out of this group here, doesn't it? And it looks like I think this is going to come back now, isn't it?
Yeah, it needs Alex Richardson to have another go now. I know he's got
Exactly.
one rider and he needs to instigate it again. He was having a bit of fun before, but yeah, well in control now. They were under pressure, Jumbo-Visma, but let's test them out inside the last 38 kilometres.
But the way that Movistar are running behind here as well, it suggests it's going to. I think, based on what we've seen so far, it's going to be about. Not Gaviria, it's going to be about Max Cantor, I think. But they look like they're a team that might want to try and ride this one too. You just see the man, Jack Rootkin-Gray, just dropping back now. The chance of survival of this breakaway are negligible now. And as we look at the third of 3 punctures to befall our breakaway, the third one being for the World Scratch Race track champion, Will Tidball. And at that point, the gap to the breakaway, to the chasing bunch behind, was only 30 seconds. There was no real chance. You can see pretty relaxed there as Rootkin-Gray eases off a little bit. The gap's actually gone out ever so slightly here. It's almost as if the bunch or Jumbo-Visma don't want to bring it back together, but I don't know. I'm not too sure. Or it's just the fact that the Unibet pairing are just pressing on regardless.
Yeah, I think it's the latter. They're just. That's what they want to do, just race. They've been here at the Tour of Britain, just putting 2 riders in a breakaway, racing. It's great to see.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, fair play for St Piran. Jack Rootkin-Gray, a very capable rider. There's no point in riding out in front when there's zero hope. He's a classy bike rider, and they've ridden a super aggressive race, and bad luck has today befallen them. And there we go. Jos van Emden swings over. Kruijswijk moved through. You can see this terrain. It's lovely roads as we head through Fryening. Really nice undulating country roads, but pretty hard if you're not on a good day. As we have the Belgian and Dutch duo of De Vries and Stockman now relaying on the front for the team that's got a lot of exposure in this race so far. TDT Unibet cycling team, on 3 occasions they've won the most aggressive rider. And looking at the way things are, as you said about an hour ago, Brian, it would be a travesty if Mr. Stockman were to lose out on that award today. So just looking ahead towards the finish that we have before things get a little bit hairy. It's not an overly technical run into the line, Brian, is it? I'm not too sure if you've got the map open at the moment. I certainly have. But they come into the edge of Harlow from the south, or they come in from the west, then in from the south and up into the town. And there's a slight change of direction, so we will actually get a very slight tailwind finish through the town, heading primarily in a westerly direction. And as they cut into the town, they start swinging back east, so they will pick up a little bit of a tailwind. That's something to consider when it comes to the final sprint. Although it's relatively sheltered, it's right in the heart of the town. But just before 3Ks to go is a hard right, and a couple of roundabouts in between kilometres 3 and 2. Then a big meandering left-hander with about 1,800 metres to go, which in turn will take us through 1 kilometre to go. Then there's just one more right-hander, but it's a pretty sweeping right-hander that takes us into the finishing straight. And then the finish line opens up with about, well, the finish line becomes in sight, should I say, with about 500 metres to go. But there is a kick. There is a little bit of a drag to the line. So it looks, from what we've seen, Brian, and we repeat and stress that we haven't actually seen it with our own eyes, looking at the profile and the map, that it appears to be quite a fast run-in, not too many acute lefts or rights. So it's going to be about speed, this one, isn't it? Keeping that pace super, super high is going to be even more important, because there aren't as many obstacles to thin the bunch out on the approach to the line.
Yeah, it will be speed, and I think, we say it every day, patience as well, not taking it on too early. You're going to need to have a bit of a lead out in this one, and so far in the first 5 stages, it's all been down to Jumbo-Visma. They've got it right, all 5 days. So with a bit more of an uphill finish, I'm just thinking this finish is going to suit possibly Tom Pidcock more than anything else. So what are we going to see from him? And but then again, it's kind of very difficult to see from the profile how hard it is. If Pidcock's there, Wout van Aert's going to be there. I think Olaf Koy is definitely going to be one of the men to beat anyway on this final, because I know it goes uphill, but I don't think it's a hard gradient up towards the line. But because Wout van Aert's got those 3 seconds, I don't think Tom Pidcock is going to kind of chip off and try and get these. I think he's going to wait more for the weekend. There's not so much of a rush, not unless you're looking at a podium. I'm talking about trying to win the race, but if you're looking for a podium, then you have to feature well, because if you're stuck in the same time, then it'll be stage places, as we're kind of talking throughout this race. But now that Wout van Aert's got 3 seconds, like he said, his interview, it's up to the others to try and drop him.
Yeah, it certainly is. So 22 seconds for the 2 riders out in front. Abram Stockman and Harris de Vries, both for the TDT Univet cycling team. There were 5 riders out in front, just in front of the peloton, with a lead that was fluctuating between 45 seconds and a minute. And unfortunately, one by one, the riders fell away, suffering 3 consecutive punctures. Ultimately, the last rider in this move, when the gap came down to about 15 seconds, Jack Rookingrape thought, well, I'll live to fight another day. Got a couple of very hard stages coming up. St. Piran have really taken this race and ridden it with the spirit that they always have. But he dropped away, leaving just 2 riders out in front now, with a very slender margin of 19 seconds, which it appears Jumbo-Visma are more than happy with. And they had to do quite a lot of pulling earlier, and when the break was 5 strong, they were moving exceptionally quickly, and we were thinking that there was a distinct possibility that the break might have a chance of staying clear, albeit a slender one. Slight deviation around that pothole there for Steven Kruijswijk before he is out of the saddle, laying on the power again. But no, they'll be happy to ride this for at least the next 15 or 20 Ks now. They're holding it at 12 seconds. It's almost perfect, isn't it, Brian, for them now? They don't need to bring it back. They pose no threat at all. It's all about the combativity award now. Yeah, it's funny how just 2 riders in front with a 15 or 20 second lead, and just holding that enables the race to just stay in play, doesn't it? Without opening the race up again. It's funny, the delicate balance, the ecosystem of a race, and the moments, what it takes to stop a race kind of imploding on itself and becoming chaotic again is only a tenuous one, isn't it? And all we have here is 2 riders with 15 seconds, and obviously the terrain is playing its part as well. It's not overly challenging, But this right now is absolutely perfect for the team that have dominated this race. And if it comes back, it becomes problematic. But right now, this is perfect.
Yeah, I think for Jumbo-Visma, they just, no matter what happens, they just have to keep a high tempo, because a high tempo stops the attacks. But there are a few kind of ups and downs, drags and things like that for someone to do something. But I really do think that, irrelevant of the two riders in front, I think they have to think about it. A couple of teams have to just maybe test out, because the last time that the attack started, Stephen Kreuzwick just disappeared straight away from the front. Any accelerations and things like that, they don't have a lot left in the legs. They can ride at a very high, steady pace, and that's what they'll be told to do all the way in the run-in, to try and thwart any attacks. But from the looks of things, and we say this every day, it looks as if many teams are just interested in, trying again in the sprint. Going to be very hard, but they're going to try again in the sprint.
It certainly looks like it. Movistar for Max Canter in this Grenadiers, as you said, all about Tom Pidcock. What a little bit more of a chance there, as you said, because of that uphill finish. But again, it's not steep, we stress. It's only 2 or 3% drag to the line. Sam Bennett, Danny Van Poppel, not too sure. But the most preeminent, the rider, clearly with a little bit more form, it appears, for Bora Hansgrohe, is indeed the Dutchman. Irishman not quite hitting his stride in this race so far, although he has had a couple of good placings. Van Poppel has just looked like he's been that little bit, has the better form. There's the lead, just goes out ever so slightly now with just over 30 k's to go. Another good catch there from De Vries. Throws the bead on out to the foot of a bystander. We've just been through Blackmore, another one of the beautiful villages that pepper and punctuate our route into the finish today in the Harlow. It's thought that the name Blackmore was actually introduced in the Middle Ages as reference to Black Marsh or Black Swamp. As we were talking about, a lot of marshes in this area. It's a low-lying land. You can just see the pair of tights there. The method used to keep the ice together. And the origins of the private church St Lawrence in the centre of Blackmore date back to 1114 and mark the site of a former Augustinian priory dissolved during the reign of Henry VIII in 1529. And that was obviously dissolved during the time that he decided that the dissolution of the monasteries was something to do. Right, 20 seconds for our two leads out in front. What's going through their minds here? This is about staying out in front as long as they can, isn't it? It's like the cat playing with a mouse now, Brian, isn't it? The Jumbo-Visma in total and utter control, and just letting these riders just dangle out in front, because it keeps the status quo absolutely perfect. But again, given the way the bunch is now, we talked about the possibility of a couple of other teams maybe lighting up, maybe trying some attacks, but I think Jumbo-Visma looks so strong, and they're only still just using 2 riders. It's going to be pretty hard to split this now. So it does seem as if most teams have settled for this to be another bunch sprint today.
It looks like it again, yeah. But all these riders have to do in front is try and enjoy themselves as much as they can. Just ride within themselves. There's no point, riding into the ground. Not a lot they can do, to be honest with you, Matt. They just have to just do a 2 up, and they're looking for all the publicity they can get more than anything. It's not about kind of saving stuff. We were talking about that earlier on, about saving something for the last kind of 25-30 kilometres and then trying to up it. They know they've been kind of left out to fry a little bit, and they are doomed at some point. It's just a matter of do any teams really want to try something, or do they want to roll into town and potentially be beaten into first place again?
Yep. Great shot here. 2 runs emerging through the foliage, the canopies across the road here. Absolutely gorgeous time of year. You can just see the leaves just beginning to turn as we head into the early stages of autumn. Well, we're not technically in autumn, but it's not too far away. But we are experiencing lovely, warm, late summer days. 30 degrees out there today. We started off in a very calm Southend-on-Sea. with the view of one of the longest piers in the world, 2.1 kilometres. And we wended our way along the coastline for a while before turning inland and ultimately heading in a primarily flat route towards Harlow. It won't be too long before we are hitting the streets on the outskirts of Harlow. It gets a little bit built up as well around the Harlow area, a little bit more urban. But right now, as you can see, we're in this beautiful Essex countryside as the lead just yo-yos again down to 15 seconds. And on these stretches of road, Brian, they're going to see them right in front, aren't they, on these little drags, especially these uphill sections. They will be in sight before briefly disappearing again. So it's a waiting game now, and it's almost to get a sense of the inevitable. And out of the other riders, I mean, it's all been about Jumbo-Visma. Van Aert took yesterday's stage, Olav Koy 4 stages. What about the chances of Ethan Vernon today? He's the rider that's come the closest. He's also been the most consistent, actually, along with Danny Van Poppel. And Ethan Vernon has been looked after well by his young team. But a lot of it, the last parts, he's going to have to do a lot of it himself in the final phase. It's being dropped off as been looked after as long as he can, then dropped off. But Ethan Vernon must be thinking, how can he beat Olav Koy? And to beat Olav Koy, you almost need to take Wout van Aert out of the equation, but Wout van Aert's going to be there again, isn't he? I mean, Koy is a good enough sprinter on his own.
Well, that was my answer, Matt. You just took my...
Sorry, mate.
You took my answer. My answer was you have to take Wout van Aert out of the equation. That's it. Ethan Vernon is very capable. If Wout van Aert wasn't in this race, I think he possibly could have got a stage win. I know they're just learning in Team GAB and it's a young team, but Wout van Aert has made the difference against everybody else. So has he got a shot today? I think everybody's got a shot today, but Wout van Aert, Olav Koy, the formidable duo. I can't see them being beaten again today. It's going to be very difficult, and we've seen Ethan Vernon. He's having to fight almost borderline, relegation. The time in East Riding, that he's having to really battle and fight for that position in the last kind of 2 kilometres and almost do things on his own. Taking nothing away from the GB team, I think you're talking about developing young riders against seasoned pro World Tour riders. That's the big difference. When you see what Affini does and Van Hooijdonk, it's incredible. They are learning, they are getting stronger. If anybody was able to get Ethan Vernon at the front with 200 metres to go, then he has stand a chance. But the first 4 sprints has been led out by Wout van Aert, and if he leads out again today, then it's going to be tough to beat Olav Koy, because he comes up at the right time, right place, right time, and delivers. And ideally you want Olav Koy maybe sitting in 4th, 5th, 6th place, and you leading out the sprint and forcing him round. But that's not been the case. He's been able to have a clean sprint for 4 days in a row. Yep. Clean. And that's what you want, a clean sprint. Everybody else is trying to get his wheel, Olav Koy's wheel. So the only way of doing it is having a clean sprint yourself, and I think Ethan Vernon has not had that armchair ride to the finish. And that's the difference in the sprinting here, that Olav Koy has just had that armchair ride to the finish. Okay, a couple of days ago he just had to make a wee effort on a left-hand corner, just free-wheeled round and got onto after losing the wheel. So just be patient, but if you get an easy ride to the finish and you get to start your sprint first, then you've got a chance. But Wout van Aert is the difference.
Yep, it certainly is. As you say, that clean sprint, it literally means he's on the wheel of Van Aert, and Van Aert drops him off, 200, 150 metres to go, 250, whenever it's been, and then he just opens it up. There's no clutter, nobody around him. It's always got that wheel, and the fight behind, as you say, is for the wheel of Olav Koy, and that's been where the chaos has been. Each stage has offered up a completely different proposition. Sprinting, we've had some narrow finishes, ever so slightly uphill, some wide finishes, but each one has been absolutely bossed by Jumbo-Visma, and that lead out by Wout van Aert has been devastating and clinical. Just the sheer ferocity of the speed that Van Aert can deliver pins everybody else as well. So even if they wanted to move up, it takes a lot of energy. One of the best illustrations of that was Fernando Gaviria, and just trying to move up in the wind to try and drop Max Canter off. Canter was already pinned on the wheel of somebody else, at Vernon, I think, at the time, and then he had to swing off. I mean, a lot of riders are at or near their maximum even before Olaf Koy opens his sprint, and that is the difference as well. It's not just he gets a clean sprint, it's just his lead. Well, Van Aert's lead-out pace is probably one of the fastest out there. We talk about some of the best lead-out riders, Morkov, for example, but I think there's another little level to the fact that I think Van Aert's sprint, I know this, we've got a solid field here, but it's not quite Tour de France sprinting field, let's be honest. So there's a clear, there's not quite the graduated scale of riders, but still saying that, and we've never really seen Wout van Aert do this before, but it is absolutely, because normally he is the leader, he'll be the rider that's been dropped off, he never needs to work for others in the sprint, but here he has, and the difference it made is quite astonishing, isn't it? It's just that 30 to 45 second power that he's got before he drops off Koy is almost unmatched.
In the Tour, there's about 4 or 5 good lead-out trains in the Tour de France to help their sprinter. Here, arguably, they've got 1, possibly 2, and I'm putting Bora Hansgrohe in there with the riders that they've got. It's just that Sam Bennett is maybe not just quite there on form. So, you know, looking at it, with the Jumbo-Visma having 4 riders now, they didn't have to use anybody else, so they've got 4 riders. So the other teams are looking at it, right, we're not as strong as Jumbo-Visma, so we're going to use that train. So it's that kind of constant battle of trying to get on the wheel of Olaf Koy, instead of trying to use their lead-out train to ride it from the front. And unfortunately, they're not strong enough to do it, and that's why Jumbo-Visma are getting it right all the time. That difference, that acceleration from Affini, when they sit second row and then they come up, they were pushed out of it a couple of days ago and still managed to come to the front. That just goes to show you that, but they won't commit themselves too early, and I think a lot of the teams here are coming up far too early and losing. The only way that you've got any chance is you use the whole team. But the whole team, you have to have numbers there with about 2 kilometres to go. Numbers, not using them up with 10, 8 or 6 kilometres to go, which they're doing. They're coming up, peeling off, coming up and peeling off. To beat the best team here, you're going to have big numbers in front of you in the last 2 kilometres and take the sprint on from the front.
Exactly. But there's numbers. Numbers is one thing, Brian, and it's important, and it's a big factor. But then it's like, well, you look at the numbers that you've got, and then you match them up with the numbers that Jumbo-Visma have. But then it's just the ability of those riders you've got to factor in as well. Do they have the capacity to go quite as quickly for as long? And I think what Jumbo-Visma have, as well as numbers, you've got, Nathan Van Hooydonk and Eduardo Affini, 2 of the strongest rouleurs in the world, and that's it. They're just a level above, aren't they? Let's be perfectly honest with you. And as you say, and
that's a whole team.
Yeah, that's it. They brought, as I say, I do feel like a broken record, but they are dominating this race because they have some of the strongest riders here, and they can do it all. And it's just that added firepower. They've got the numbers, but. Okay, you can have the numbers, but you need the riders to be able to ride at those sorts of speed. And as you say, Bora Hansgrohe, they've got the likes of Ryan Mullen, Nils Pollitt, Danny Van Poppel. That's a really good lead out for Bennett, or when Bennett might actually be helping out Van Poppel today, I'd imagine, based on what we've said. So I think, Bora have got a very capable, top-tier mini lead-out train here, because the teams are small. They're only teams of 6. So they're only smaller lead-out trains that we're talking here. But still, theirs is effective, and Movistar determined as well. They've got the likes of Carlos Verona, the big powerhouse. Max Canterbury dropped off, and Fernando Gaviria. But it's a smaller lead-out train. I think they're going to be relying a lot on what Gaviria can do. The way that Gaviria can float around in the final as well. That real top-end speed he's got. That track craft as well. And again, Gaviria. It's not very often we see him in a small team like this. And it's only through that crash that he's not actually participating in the sprints and he's looking after Max Canter. But for Canter to have Gaviria to look after him is massively important. And again, they're not too far away, and they've got to keep believing. You can't just. That's what sprinting is all about, isn't it? You've just got to keep trying. And there's a small degree of luck, well, a reasonable degree of luck in sprinting as well. When that space opens up, we talk about sprinting, power, lead out, wind direction. But there's also sometimes there's a lot of it you can never calculate. It's decisions made in a split second when that space. What way does a lead out rider swing off? Is it to the left or to the right? And what way does another rider react? Does he pick the left or right? And sometimes it's just space, isn't it, that opens up, and it's that instinctive moment to go through these gaps that just present themselves just through sheer fluke as well. So there's so much you can dial, so much you can consider. There are a certain amount of things you can control, but then within a sprint it's basically chaos as well, isn't it, Brian? And it's trying to make sense of that, and that's what separates the best sprinters in the world, and sets them apart, is that not just the top end, it's that innate sense of craft, and that reaction speed within those moments of chaos, to seize those moments and know when to go, know when to back off, know when to be patient as well.
It isn't, most of these sprinters know where they want to be and when they want to go. Okay, sometimes they make mistakes, but you got to consider the other teams are trying to do exactly the same thing, and that's where, like I said a moment ago, that having an armchair ride to the perfect place, not everybody can have that. And when you've got the big firepower like Jumbo-Visma have here at Tour of Britain, that's made look easy. Every sprint, Olaf Koy has been he's been second wheel with 200 metres to go. He's just kind of launched. So how can you do that yourself? Well, do exactly what Jumbo-Visma have done, but you don't have the same firepower that they have. So it's always going to be very difficult. Even in the technical finishes, they're getting to the front at the right time, the perfect time. It's a difficult one. How can you beat Jumbo-Visma? I think it's still going to be very difficult. Of course, you can always hope. In sprints, sometimes you don't always get to sprint the way you want, purely because you get blocked in a little bit. But Olaf Koy's never been blocked in. Never. And, many others have. They haven't got the right wheel. So that's the conundrum that the other teams have got. That they're taking chances, while Olaf Koy has been led into these sprints pretty much, easily, because he's got super trust in Wout van Aert, and Wout van Aert is just an incredible athlete, but also an incredible rider that knows where to be and how to be in a sprint finish, and that's what you need. You need someone that knows when to move up, when not to, and it's the same as a sprinter with Olaf Koy, that he lost the wheel, but Wout van Aert's wheel, but he never panicked, he never moved up in the straight. If he moved up in the straight, that would have taken a little bit of air, so he waited till it was coming up to the corner and just got that kind of free energy around the corner and moved onto the wheel just in perfect timing.
Yep. It is interesting stuff. It really, really is. And also one thing that you need to factor in as well when looking at the way a sprint, the early phase of a sprint, let's say 5-10 k's to go, especially that final part where Jumbo-Visma have been taking it up. There's the firepower, there's that high speed, there's the confidence that they have, but it's also, they're an imposing presence as well, Brian. And also we talk about the hierarchy within the peloton, not sprinters, not GC riders. There's the respect afforded. They're afforded a lot of respect as well, and that's not through intimidation. It's just that's Wout van Aert. I think it's always the fight. Nobody's fighting for Van Aert's wheel, because it's like, do you know what I mean?
They might today.
They might today. And that's the thing. They clearly, because I think it's all optics, isn't it? It's like these riders are afforded so much respect as well. It's a little bit different in the Tour when it's a bit more chaotic, a little bit more wah. But here, they are afforded that little bit of respect and maybe that little bit more space. So when you throw that into the mix as well, like it's almost assumed now every single time. I mean, we know how talented Coy is, but he's never not been able to get on his lead-out rider's wheel, has he? And Wout van Aert's wheel. It's just quite interesting.
Thought for a moment there he was going to stop and wait for a bus.
Yeah, it's Tom Pidcock. Some issue there. A nice neat dismount. I'm not too sure what the situation is there. Looks like just a mechanical. But yeah, there's that as well. So multiple factors. But can things change today? I'm sure there'll be teams, well, there are teams wanting to get close and to take that victory. 5 stages out of 5 have been won by Jumbo Visma. The first 4 stages from Olav Koy, and yesterday when we finished in Felixstowe, it was Wout van Aert who took the stage win, and with it the race lead, as it managed to create a 3-second gap. So no time bonuses.
They're starting to come up now, and still 16 kilometres to go. I don't think they have to do that. Just sit behind Jumbo Visma for the moment, and this is what often happens. One team moves up, another team wants to move up, and I just think just save your energy. I don't think there's any real need to put your nose in the wind at the moment. We're certainly with 16 kilometres to go.
Yeah, Tom Pidcock has got service. He's now back in the convoy, weaving his way back. It was an interesting sight. It's a craft in itself, as our 2 riders out in front about to get caught. Eben Stockman and Harris de Vries of the TDT Unibet cycling team's tenure on the front is about to end with 16 Ks to go. Which one will get the award? Will it be de Vries today? Who knows? Stockman already has been awarded the most combative rider. But yeah, they were part of a 5-man move, which unfortunately completely and utterly capitulated due to bad luck and nothing more. But they certainly put on a big fight and another good show as they continue to keep on riding. 15.7 Ks to go, and as you say, Brian, yeah, there's Bora Hansgrohe taking it up on the right-hand side by the looks of things, closely followed by the team of Uno X. In the centre, Bingal. They've been sprinting pretty well. They had 2 riders yesterday, Brian, inside the top 6. Alexander Solby was up there, as was David Persico. Both of those riders are stagiaires, but Persico, the young Italian sprinter, and Solby, the man from Denmark. So watch out for those riders. Expect them to be in the mix too. Bora Hansgrohe, Danny Van Poppel, I think, is going to be the protected man today, but we don't know. We'll soon find out. Rory Townsend, perhaps, for the purple, in the purple and yellow of Bolton Equities. Watch out for the white jersey of Great Britain's Ethan Vernon. Could be a finish for Tom Pidcock to figure as well today, as Brian was saying, with that slight uphill drag to the line. Casper van Uden in the white jersey of Best Young Rider, riding for DSM Firmenich. He's been pretty quick over the last couple of days as well. Luke Lamberty yet to really figure. I think it's fair to say he might be a little bit disappointed so far, but I'm sure he's going to try and want to make amends today. Moving on to the World Tour in 2024 and 2025. But Luke Lamberty for Trinity Racing, definitely one to consider today. Along with Milan Fretin, the Belgian, riding for Team Flanders Balois, and Sian Friedheim of the Uno X cycling team. So they're the ones to watch out for today. And of course, Olav Koy and Max Canter from Movistar in the blue jersey. So they're the main sprinters in this race who've figured in the top 10s. And this is the moment that both of our riders out in front, the duo from TDT Unibet cycling team, are finally back within the clutches of the peloton, and it's all back together now with 14.2 Ks to go as Ida Schelling moves through to the front. Just behind him, the grimacing face of Nils Pollitt, and DSM opting to take the right hand side of the road. 14 Ks to go, Brian.
And yet again, teams are coming up and using their riders. I still think that they can afford to sit back. This run-in, we've already kind of talked about it. It's not too dangerous. You would want to do this if it was a little bit more dangerous. We're going to see this moment again of the shake of the hands, pat in the back. It's not too dangerous. It's not too technical. You'd want to bring your rider up if that was the case, because you want an easier ride to the finish. I think as some of these teams can afford to kind of sit back a little bit more and wait and be a little bit more patient rather than ride on the front.
moving through the centre. Q36.5, they'll be looking after Simon Saniok of Poland. Had a couple of good finishes so far in this race. They already had a man in the breakaway earlier today, the first break of the day. That was Kamil Melecki. And that break was caught. And then the race opened up into what we can call phase 2. So 3 distinct parts to this race as Q36.5 really take things up at the front. Into that right-hander, still a fair distance to go, 13.1 k. There's a little bit of an issue there. I think this is Melecki on the front at the moment, actually. Took a little bit of extra pace into that corner as the road has started to thin. So yeah, a little bottleneck here as we look at Sam Bennett, the Irish sprinter, moving on next year to the French squad AG2R Citroën. But still looking for another win this season. Again, we're not too sure what the decision has been, but over the last couple of days it has actually been Van Poppel who sprinted, so and it's come pretty close. Was third yesterday. Ethan Vernon actually won the bunch sprint yesterday for second place, just behind. Ridiculous acceleration, and that's a wonderful move from Jumbo-Visma. Wout van Aert taking that win, remember. And remember, watch out for Wout van Aert today. He is in the leader's jersey, so if you're wondering where he is, he's in the red and blue jersey, and Olaf Koy is in the green jersey, not in their familiar yellow and black kit. So Bora on the left, Q36.5, just next to them Damien Howson shaking his head, Movistar in the centre with Carlos Verona, and then for the first time it looked as if Jumbo-Visma just taking a bit of a back seat, and Nathan Van Hooydonk,
don't they?
Yeah, they just drop back now and they just leave it for the other teams.
Leave the other teams to use their power, and they just kind of sit back and benefit a little bit. That's what they do, and this is what I was trying to say. If you want a number of your riders to be there in the final, then you can afford to sit back a little bit. It's not too dangerous a run in to the finish. What you want is big firepower inside the last 2 kilometres.
Schelling just in the front, Nils Pollitt just behind him, Matthew Walls there, and then the last 2 riders, Van Poppel and Sam Bennett. Mullen also there as well. The whole squad of Bora Hansgrohe on the right hand side of the road, just going through the centre. Bright yellow kit, the fluorescent yellow kit of Bingo WB. And it is Verona on the front now. Gregor Mulberg just behind him. You just see on the inside, slightly obscured, Wout van Aert. And the pace starting to rise here, still 11 k's to go, and proper pace being set here at the moment. More for positioning play. Ineos Grenadiers also just holding back a little bit. They're a team that one would imagine will leave it a little bit late as well. There's another little pinch point. So as we get towards the edge of Harlow here, it gets a little bit more technical, Brian, doesn't it? There's 1 or 2 turns, and clearly that's the information that's been fed to the riders from the cars behind. They might have it on the head units as well, but the DSs will be saying, right, move to the front here. Got this series of corners, roundabouts coming up. So now they're going to be constantly fed information from the car about what's up ahead, aren't they? Almost like a rally driver. Yeah,
if you've got your earpiece in, unlike Ida Schelling, you'll be able to hear the car. That's why he's receiving the shouts from Ryan Mullen. Look at it. Jumbo-Visma, they do this all the time. They sit back, they sit kind of second row. Nathan Van Hooydonk there, he's trying to get that little bit of shelter from Movistar. 10 kilometres ago, he knows that the job of Jus van Emden and Steven Kruijsbeek is over for the day. Now these 4 take over, and he's saving energy all the time. And the other teams are using their energy. Okay, it's only 1 rider, but I think it has settled down. They haven't kind of pushed on too much, so that the pace has been taken out the front of the peloton here. You just have to remain really patient. Just stay in a good position, but just don't put your nose in the wind.
Exactly. And just taking the edge off the pace here, as you said, Brian. Just under 10 kilometres to go now as we head towards Harlow. Still out in the leafy countryside of Essex at the moment, not too far away from the border with the neighbouring county, Hertfordshire, a county that I spent most of my formative years in. So it continues to twist and turn. Nathan Van Hooydonk just sat on the inside there. And again, the NEG doing a cracking job, just warning riders of these little pinch points that they pass through safely. But all of these just squeeze the bunch. This is where these sometimes unforced errors are made, isn't it? So getting at the front is crucial, especially for the riders who are looking towards the GC over the next couple of days as we head into Gloucestershire tomorrow and into Wales on Sunday. They're the big days that will be decisive in this year's Tour of Britain. Finishing this race in Wales, of course, after starting it in Greater Manchester. Yeah, 6 days ago now. But yeah, nobody wants to make too much, make any sort of mistake now and throw any chances of overall glory away. And they really have knocked it off a little bit here. There's a few riders almost coming together there, Brian.
Yeah, it's just that because they've knocked off the pace, it's slowed down a little bit. I think they've got themselves into position. Like I was saying, 10 kilometres ago, you don't want to be pushing on. You're going to, wreck the team riding that hard. So they're just happy just to slow the pace down. They're in some of these kind of lanes. Everybody knows it's a bit safer to be at the front, so they've got the front. They just have to make sure that they're not using up their teammates, and it doesn't look as if they are. Ida Sherling is just kicking it right back. Verona's kicking it right back. This is really slowing things up because they know it'll be a mad rush in the last few kilometres. So the teams have just got themselves in position, so they're just holding position. Slowed it down a little bit because they know they're going to need their speed in the last few kilometres.
Yeah, it's going to pick up shortly. It's 8.4 k's to go. Still out, as you can see, in the countryside here. But that little bit of an acceleration earlier was clearly to get into position for these narrower roads, where it clearly is quite hard to move up. And as you said, that effort has now been made. The teams that wanted to be near the front, the teams of the big sprints in this race, Jumbo-Visma not too far away, Movistar at the front for Max Canter, Bora Hansgrohe there for Danny van Poppel. The big three teams, really. Happy to roll through at the front, and they really have started to knock it off here. Nils Pollitt now in the centre too. So there's going to be a very sharp acceleration to bring this back up to speed. It's going to happen quite suddenly, Brian, isn't it?
Just look at what Bora are doing. They're punching a hole in the peloton at the front. They're not.
Ooh, Gaviria down.
I think that's our man from the breakaway as well.
Oh, Gaviria's holding his arm. Oh, I think he's done his collarbone. Let's hope that isn't the case. Poor old. This is what we're talking about, the way they're going slow. It's just a little bit of a touch of wheels.
He's the rider that came down.
He was. He came down first.
And he came down slow.
So unfortunate. That's it. They're only probably moving at 35 k's an hour here, Brian, if that, aren't they? And
even
when you fall...
less than that, yeah.
Yeah, 30
Straight
k's an hour. They're the worst, not the worst sort of crashes, but because you fall and all of your body weight goes down in one space, in one place, and isn't dissipated by skidding across the ground, all that energy goes onto one place, and quite often it's the collarbone that goes, and that was really unfortunate. I hope that it isn't the case, but the way that he was clutching his collarbone there, it didn't look good at all, did it? That's a big shame.
He really has had a lot of bad luck. What I was saying about Bora there, you just punch a hole instead of riding behind each other. Just take up more of the road space at the front. If you are just joining us, the ticker's right. Yeah, there is 7 kilometres to go to the finishing line.
This is almost like a track sprint. This is very different than what we've seen over the last few days, isn't it? With 15 k's to go, I mean, the pace has been high on every stage. What we have had is a very fast race. But right now, they're almost approaching this with real prudence and cautiousness. Damien Howson just rolling through into the centre, having a bit of a chat. It's almost as if the race has been neutralised here, Brian. This is very, very interesting indeed. 7 k's to go. You were right to just raise it. We started earlier on today in Southend-on-Sea. This is stage 6 of the Tour of Britain. The race currently being led by Wout van Aert of Jumbo-Visma. He's there on the right-hand side in that blue jersey with a white band across the chest and the yellow and the blue sleeves. And the red sleeves, should I say. But here we go. Seizing the opportunity to go. That's a good little move here by the man from big old WB. Are they going to get organised behind us? Dimitri Piskins is a decent rider, a journeyman professional. He's been around for a long, long time, and they need to react to this one. 6.6 k's to go. Nobody's taking it up. If this lad gets 30, 40 seconds, he could steal this one. This is good stuff, Brian.
Yeah, still 6.5 to go. A bit hesitancy to take it on. Does look as if Jumbo-Visma have now come to the front. They realise the danger. It's okay going on the attack and getting 200 metres. It's keeping it going, as you know. It's pushing the big numbers out. Not everybody's going to Wout van Aert, but they will have to pay attention to this rider. Still, they're trying to force the hand. Everybody came to the front there, slowed down. They know that they're going to need numbers in the end. Not willing to burn anybody up. Still 6 kilometres to go, but somebody's going to have to break soon and start to pick up this pace.
Well, Dimitri Peskins also sits at only 3 seconds. In fact, the entire Bingold WB team are all 3 seconds behind. So 5.8 k's to go. This lad has opened up quite a gap. This is looking very, very good. Sheltered from the wind. He sees an opportunity. Now, this is amazing.
Yep, this is good. 16 seconds.
16
but
seconds.
I think the other teams are forcing Jumbo-Visma. They've got the fastest sprinter there, so they have to do something. It's slowly but surely just starting to crank up a little bit, and it was the reaction of Uno X that kind of started this one. Jumbo-Visma remaining really calm in this situation because, like you say, they've got the race lead, they've got the best sprinter, but they're not willing to be lulled into doing the riding. They're leaving it up to Uno X and Bora now.
Yep, so Frederick Versney's on the front now. That was interesting. There was real brinkmanship there. Smart bit of riding this one as well. Big acceleration. Looking, well, I've got an opportunity here. Why not try? He's now 5 k's to go, just under. He's out of sight and out of mind. 15 seconds lead on these sorts of roads means that you can't be seen. So now Bora Hansgrohe on the right-hand side, relaying with the Uno X Pro cycling team. And Jumbo-Visma just sitting back and letting the other teams pick it up. And Peskins is absolutely flying. 16 seconds for the Belgian. And it's now moving up on the inside. It is the red of the Ineos Grenadiers. So 16 seconds, 4.4 k's to go. And this man is absolutely flying. This is brilliant stuff.
I think if you won 5 out of 5 stages, you can play that card. Well, we've won every day. We're not going to take it up. If we take it up, we risk losing. So it's up to you guys. As Wout van Aert said yesterday, well, you have to gap me. I don't think they'll be too worried about things, but every day they're just kind of sitting back and coming up at the right time. Now it's Bora Hansgrohe to take it on. Now they have got pretty much the whole team, but 15 seconds isn't a lot in 4 kilometres, especially with that slightly uphill finish. That parked car may cause a little bit of problem as well for the peloton behind. I hope not, but yeah, the legs are burning now. I don't think he's going to go to the end, but it's very a good move from Peskins there. And we saw them the other day. They tried to go on the attack and they run in towards the finish. They're always that sort of team, but he's going to be reeled back. But it's Bora and now GB leading the affairs at the front.
Yeah, good move though. It's certainly forced them to ride a little bit earlier. Well, maybe just a kilometre or so earlier than they wanted to. Very strange. I've never really seen that before, the way they knocked off the speed. 7 seconds it is now for the Belgian out in front of Bingold WB. They've also got a couple of good sprinters amongst their number, Persico and Solby. But right now, the lead starting to come down now as the pennant man just flags through. We're heading in now to the last 3.2 k's. Well, it's going to be snuffed out. It was a good move by Peskins. Saw the opportunity, tried to go for it, and has forced the other teams to chase. But as you said, quite rightly, Brian, 5 stage wins to the good. Jumbo-Visma said, well, if you want a stage win, we've got 5, go for it. That was really smart riding here, which means they're going to leave it quite late now. It is Ineos Grenadiers moving up. 2 seconds is the lead for Peskins. It's going to come back together with 2.8 k's to go. We've got another roundabout coming up in about 300 metres time as Ineos take it up at the front.
Yeah, they do. And if they move out to this side, then they're helping Jumbo-Visma. They're coming up the outside. They always time this to perfection. Said round about the 2 kilometre mark. That's what, in their minds, that's when they want to be up towards the front.
Yep. It is Luke Rowe taking them round that roundabout, and in the process just thinning things out a little bit. A couple of Bora Hansgrohe riders just tagged on to the 5 riders out in front. Still big pull on the front from Luke Rowe, the man in the white jersey just on the outside. That's Joshua Giddings trying to drag Ethan Vernon into contention. Just sat behind now, a couple of places back. Remember, in the leader's jersey, if you can't spot him in yellow, it's because he's in the blue and red jersey of Wout van Aert, but it is still a long pull on the front from Luke Rowe. 2 kilometres to go. They've got a roundabout coming up, gently meanders through the Flamme Rouge. Then we've got a sweeping right-hander, then it kicks up to the line. 1,800 metres to go now, Brian.
Yeah, we said this in the run-in, Matt, didn't we, about having numbers inside the last 2 kilometres, and look who has got the numbers, taking it on from the front. But looking in the left-hand side, Jumbo-Visma moving up very, very quickly. They know that they're being dealt a harsh hand here from Ineos Grenadiers, but just look at what's happening now. Ennis Grenadiers can't keep that tempo up. Nathan Van Hooydonk just came past there. Finney's there. They're doing exactly what they've done the last few days. They're taking it on from the front. No one else can do it.
Big crash behind there, Brian. Loads of riders are down, unfortunately, in the last corner. That's an enormous pile-up, but, well, several riders down. 10 riders or so on the deck here as we come now into the finishing straight. This is where things start to kick up. It's Ben Turner on the front as the road starts to rise. Eduardo Affini is the rider just behind him. He's dragging with him Wout van Aert, and just behind Wout van Aert in the green jersey is the winner of 4 stages so far, Olav Koy, who is going to open things up. It's a big pull on, an enormous pull on the front now. But 500 metres to go as they continue to fight for the wheels. Wout van Aert now picks it up at the front. He's done this so often. He won yesterday, but there's some riders moving up the outside. Vernon is coming through. Van Aert still on the front on the left-hand side. It is Una X as well. Van Aert is done. Koy opens things up. Tom Pidcock is there as well, but it's Vernon on the left-hand side. And it looks like it is going to be a victory for Uno X as we're coming through. Like Vernon in the centre. It looks like Vernon's going to get this. Vernon takes the win for Great Britain. Oh, was he rolled on the line? I think it was Vernon that got it. Could have been Van Poppel there, but I think it was Ethan Vernon who took it at the last. It's a photo finish there, Brian. But what a spectacular finale. Koy capitulated on the run in there. Died in the last few metres on the rise to the line. Well, couldn't quite call that, but I think Vernon may have just got it on the line.
Yeah, that's going to come down to a photo finish there. I don't know who's won that one, but what a finish that was. And I think Ennis Grenadiers made a difference there in that run in towards the finish. You know, they took it on from the front. And in fact, I think it was Tiller that was there for Uno X as well. So they opened up. I said before that you have to open up before Koy has. Give them that, that race. And you can see them. You know, Van Uden is there. Just watch Vernon here. That push again. I don't think it's enough.
No.
I really don't think it's enough for anything to happen here, but just watch the acceleration here of Van Poppel. Oh, he got it. He got it, I think.
Van Poppel might just, that's right on the line. Right on the line. It looks from that angle as if it might be Van Poppel that gets that one, but we'll have to go to a photo finish. It was literally right on the line, Brian. Certainly past the line, Van Poppel was in front. Here it is again in slow motion. Koy at the moment is on the front. Well, it's Attila, as you say, up this drag. Van Uden on the left in the white jersey. And then this is when in the centre, this is when Vernon comes through. Oof. It looks from that angle that Vernon got it, but from the top angle, it looks the other way around.
We'll wait for confirmation. But you see how Wout van Aert tied up as well. He tied up too early there for Koy. Koy wasn't ready to go. Head down. He was well beaten in this one.
I think it looks like it might have been. Too difficult to call. I think
we'll have to wait. Too close to call.
Looks like they've awarded it already to Van Poppel. Wow, so close. It looks like they have called that one already, Brian. We haven't still seen the photo finish, but by the way that the comportment there of Van Poppel said they have already given it. So Danny Van Poppel it is that takes the win ahead of Ethan Vernon. It is Tord Gumstad in third ahead of Olav Koy, Casper Van Uden, Nicolo Parisini, David Persico, Rob Donaldson, Tom Pidcock and Simon Sanyok. That is your top 10. So Bora Hansgrohe get their win by the slenderest of margins there. Danny Van Poppel taking it home for the German World Tour team, breaking the dominance of Jumbo-Visma. Well, that was a thriller, wasn't it? Just take us through this one, Brian. This is also the crash that's coming up there. There's several riders down. That's really nasty. Look, there's loads of riders that have come down.
At that pace, really at that pace. But now you have to, we're going to see it again. Why do we have to see this again?
I don't know. Connor Swift onto the pavement, off onto the grass, and misses the crash, but that's nasty. Oh, that's really nasty. And that was a 50 km/h plus crash. It's not what you want to see. Hopefully that the riders that came down in that crash are okay. But well, there we go. Yeah, Movistar, well, there's several riders down from different teams. A couple of Trinity riders came down there too. But oh yeah, there it is. There we go. There's a tyre. A tyre in it. Wow, there we go. So Danny Van Poppel takes it there for Bora Hansgrohe. And he was carrying, he's on a slightly bigger gear, just carried that pace, but it's only quite literally in the dying meters. And as you say, with that throw of the bike that took victory away from Ethan Vernon. Well, I've no doubt we might be speaking to Ethan Vernon again. We asked the same thing.
Jumbo-Visma have been beaten.
Yeah, and Jumbo-Visma have been beaten. They have indeed. But maybe there's that little, I think that little bit of an uphill finish just made the difference there, didn't they? Olav Koy was dropped off a little bit early, opened things up, but just didn't quite have it today, did he? That drag suits a different sort of sprinter as well, I think, because it's quite a long drag to the line. Looks like that's about 2% gradient, flattens near the top. But that was a super hard finale.
It was indeed. It was a good sprint, actually. Good sprint from Ethan Vernon. Just so close again.
Yeah.
They had their chance, and you know, like we were saying in the run in, they're a formidable duo, Wout van Aert and Olav Koy, but I think that would have suited Wout van Aert better than Olav Koy there. But they chose to go with Olav Koy. This is the run in again. I thought Ineos Grenadiers did a great job. Vernon just remained patient, and think at this stage, you know, everything was looking good. All the major sprinters were there. Everybody was fighting for the wheel of Olav Koy, and you know, this crash happened just at 1 kilometre to go. Really nasty crash.
Yeah.
So it was a turner into the last curve here, and at this stage you thought, well, it lined up here with Affini, Wout van Aert and Koy. You thought, deja vu again. But just watch out, Pidcock is battling, I think it's Lamperti. He's kind of battling with a little bit of kind of head knock there. I think Van Poppel was in front of Vernon here, so it'll be interesting to see when Vernon comes past. Just watching now, he gets one of his GB riders comes up, and I think that's it. He just tries to move on to the wheel, comes past as the sprint opens up here, and Uno X went long. Koy just never had it, and he just had to punch that light hole. He had to be careful there, Vernon, because if he did it too violently, I think he would have been relegated. But it just nudge out, and it could have been just that nudge that just slowed him down, just taking that slight speed off that allowed Van Poppel to come hurtling towards the line and just take it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, Ethan Vernon, to give him his credit, I mean, that was fine. He just was brushing past him. It's just a gentle brush. There's nothing wrong with it, but he definitely would have had to take a bit of pace off there. Just backed off before going again, and I think that might have made the difference. But that sprinting, it was a narrow gap. It was a straight line sprint. It was a narrow gap, and in the end, I think Olav Koy did give Vernon that little bit of extra space. Started to fade in the sprint then as Vernon punched again, but coming up even quicker in the slipstream of Vernon was a rapidly fast finishing Danny Van Poppel to take a well-deserved win for Bora Hansgrohe. And as you said, Brian, breaking the stranglehold of Jumbo-Visma. Have to be satisfied so far with 5 wins only, but I think it's good for the race as well. But a fascinating sprint finish there. A little kick up to the line. Just on the edge of Harlow here. So stage 6 is done and dusted, and tomorrow we move into the final couple of stages of this race. 2 difficult stages still to come. Tewkesbury to Gloucester, that's tomorrow. 170.9 kilometres. And there is Ethan Vernon, best British rider again on the day, but it's not going to be. He's going to be bitterly disappointed. To have, if you're beaten roundly by length, you kind of accept it. But to be beaten by the width, well, half a tyre's width, Brian, is going to be massively frustrating for him, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think that kind of rubbing shoulders with Koy, maybe taking the kind of edge off. It's you want as clean a ride to the finish as possible. As you see, London City in the shot now, very kind of murky city. I'm going to have to dash to the airport soon as well. I'm off to Canada for Montreal and Quebec.
Oh yeah, so I do believe from your hotel in Montreal you're going to still be doing the Tour of Britain, so thanks for doing that for us, Brian.
Yeah, but I'll take one for the team, don't worry.
Yeah,
another line to line starting in I think about 15 minutes time.
There you go. Well, good luck with that.
Join Rob Hatch and Pippa York and myself.
Brilliant stuff. You're doing a big shift, don't you? And of course, give you any spoilers at all. The race hasn't finished yet. We've got the Col de Tourmalet stage of the Vuelta, which is on as well. Across on GCN Plus Eurosport. But we continue with the Tour of Britain through the weekend until its culmination on Sunday in Wales. As you said, Brian, we look at a rather foggy, smoggy looking London. Here's Danny Van Poppel.
Danny, congratulations, your first win here at the Tour of Britain, and you've broken the domination of Team Jumbo-Visma at the race. How are you feeling?
Oh, great. You know, I'm happy to win here. It was tough to beat the Jumbo guys, so it's nice to beat one of the best teams, best sprinters. Yeah.
Can you just take us through that sprint finish?
First of all, Sam normally was the leader, but he felt not great, so I took my chances. And yeah, I think it was really close. I look now to the images, but yeah, I think my jump was so important, and I know I can do it quite well, the timing and everything. And I think that delivered me the win.
We've seen the finish line picture, and it really is. There's just a very, very small gap in it, and with Ethan Vernon. So, yeah, it was just a tiny, tiny margin.
Yeah, you know, he became a world champion, so, yeah, on the track, so it's nice to beat him and Jumbo, so, yeah.
You said Sam wasn't feeling it, but what were the agreed team tactics as you went into this stage?
Yeah, what I said, normally Sam was the leader, but then they did everything for me. After the Tour, I felt really strong. So I tried to continue this weekend the great shape, but it will be hard.
And what does the win mean for you personally?
You know, 2 years ago, I changed to lead-out man, but also it gave me some rest and more relaxed. But yeah, I take my opportunities when Sam is not feeling good, or I can go over the hill and he cannot. So yeah, I'm better than ever. So then I take my chance.
And going into the final two stages, everything changes with quite different parkour. What can we expect from Bora Hansgrohe?
In Germany, I did a really good climbing work. I hope the shape is still there. So yeah, the steep, punchy climbs really suits me. But yeah, for sure you have Ineos with Pidcock. They do everything to drop us, and I think it will be a big day tomorrow and the day after.
Congratulations again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Big smiles there from our stage winner today, Danny Van Poppel of the Netherlands. Very long-term contract through with Bora Hansgrohe now to the end of 2027. But there's the situation at the top of the general classification. As we head into the weekend, Wout van Aert still leads this race. Just a smidge over 21 hours of riding. Ethan Vernon second at 3 seconds. Then it's Olav Koy, Danny Van Poppel, Tom Pidcock, David Bomboy, Casper Van Nieuwenhoek, Percival Gonzalo Serrano, last year's winner, and Rasmus Tiller rounding out the top 10. As we head to Gloucestershire tomorrow. And here's that moment again. Perfect timing from Van Poppel. Looks like he's at this point here, the sprocket higher, and there's the max power, 1320 watts for Van Poppel, 1370 there for Vernon. Uphill drag to the line. Chaotic last couple of kilometres, last 5 or 6 Ks in fact. And Peskin's just profiting briefly from a real, almost neutralised section where they really started to slow things down. Then the chase ensued. It was mopped up with about 3 Ks to go, and with only 1,500 mids to go, there was a big crash. And there's Ethan Vernon. It's the narrowest of margins, but that's sprinting for you. Ethan Vernon will be disappointed with that. He's a young man. He's got an exceptionally bright future, and we're going to hear from him now.
Ethan, so close and yet so far. How are you feeling?
Yeah, just as good as the other days. Again, I got out and I had to go early because the surge from behind was coming. And yeah, I paid for it with 5 meters to go. I just tied up and Danny was coming off the wheel. So yeah, nothing I could do about it. I knew he was coming and I was going flat out.
Yeah, you can just see just how close that was. So a lot of work went into getting you up to that point.
Yeah, the boys were really good again, and Ollie did a massive turn. I was quite far out, over a couple of K to go, and Ollie did a big turn and put me right up on the wheel of Coy. Coy was a bit further back, and then Noah found me again with 500 to go and hit out, and yeah, them two were perfect today.
You must be taking confidence by the day. You're still knocking on the door there, but is there another chance for you possibly tomorrow?
I don't know, it's going to be hard, and there's a lot of climbers and GC riders that have not done anything, so obviously I'm going to go full because there's nothing else to save my legs for. But yeah, we'll see if it's enough to survive.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A pretty disappointed Ethan Vernon there, but pragmatic as ever. And he certainly was looked after exceptionally well by the young Great Britain riders. He got him into position. This is where he opened things up. Tiller on the left-hand side, starting to fade now. Coy out of it, just coming through at the very last. It looked like Vernon had got it. In fact, I called Ethan Vernon as the winner. It was that close, and when we saw the photo finish, it was clear, but still by the narrowest of margins. Danny Van Poppel takes his second win of the year. Taking a visit to the podium shortly. A stage winner will be presented to the crowd here on the outskirts of Harlow, just on the border of the Essex and Hertfordshire line. And we look forward to the final two stages where the parkour really starts to shift and change. We move into the hills tomorrow, Tewkesbury to Gloucester. Only two categorised climbs on the route, but it is very hilly. A lot of uncategorised climbs, which ordinarily would get, I think, second or even first category status. But two second category climbs. One comes quite early, the climb of Winchcombe Hill, and the final climb of the day comes with about 20 k's to go. That's the climb of Crawley Hill. One of the steepest climbs we've had so far. It has been a primarily flat race so far. So Vernon now waiting for his stint on the podium as the best placed British rider. Let's have a look at this again. On the front at the moment for the Ineos Grenadiers, just opened up a small lead leading out. That's Ben Tarnett. Eduardo Fini now just latching onto the back wheel of Turner. So Wout van Aert is the man in the red and blue jersey of leader. And Tom Pidcock just behind at this particular stage. And now Van Aert starts to go, really winding things up. Pidcock on the wheel here, still of minus 1 4 stages, Olav Coy. So this is where Van Aert's done. Van Aert swings off, Coy goes on the left-hand side. And this is the final surge to the line. Coming through the narrowest of gaps in the centre is Ethan Vernon. But look at the space, the road that was made up by Van Poppel. At the last 5 or 6 pedal strokes, took the win by a tyre's width. So Bora Hansgrohe muscle in on the fun. Jumbo Visma having taken 5 stage wins, and now Bora Hansgrohe get their win. I think it's fair to say very well deserved as well. So the leader's jersey still on the shoulders of Wout van Aert heading into tomorrow's stage. Still has that 3 seconds lead. The green jersey still safely on the shoulders of Olav Coy.
Councillor Andrew Johnson, and the leader of Harlow Council, Councillor Dan Saunts.
So we'll be visiting the podium in just a few moments' time for our daily awards. And here we go, podium time. Time to award some prizes.
For the team of Bora Hansgrohe is Danny Van Poppel.
Here's your winner, Danny Van Poppel. He's had a remarkably consistent week so far and has finally made that breakthrough to take a well-deserved stage win on stage 6. We started in Southend-on-Sea and we wended our way west to finish on the outskirts of Greater London. In Harlow, he takes the prizes, souvenirs. 30 years of age now is Danny Van Poppel, and as he said in his interview just a few moments ago, just gets better and better. One of the finest lead-out riders in the business, and when given freedom, is also one of the fastest sprinters as well. Normally works in the service of Sam Bennett. Not quite in top form at the moment, so this man has taken his chance with both hands and he's taken the win here today, and he looks delighted. His career back in 2012 with the Continental Rabobank team, before moving on to Vacansoleil, Trek for a couple of years, Sky for a couple of years, NL Team Jumbo-Visma, as they are now, for a couple of years, Circus 1-2 for 2 seasons, and now this is season number 2 with Bora Hansgrohe, where clearly he is functioning at the highest level. Yeah, there's that little surge there. Vernon still flying, and there's that late lunge which gives the victory to Danny Van Poppel. His brother Boy Van Poppel did a good ride yesterday in the Vuelta, finishing in the top 3.
And your tour operating race leader for the team of Jumbo-Visma is...
So the race leader as we head into the final 2 stages. The man who won this race in 2021, he needs no real introduction. One of the finest riders on the planet. It is a Wout van Aert of Jumbo-Visma. Takes another leader's jersey. Still holds a slender 3-second lead as we head into stage 7 tomorrow. Well, Van Aert is all smiles. Good day in the saddle. Don't think they'll be too bothered. They didn't pull off the win today. Already 5 wins in the bag.